executive session. And so welcome to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271's board meeting on May 3rd, 2021. If I could ask all gentlemen to remove their hats and everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. I will introduce the individuals up front here. To my far right is Mr. Casey Morrisroe, board member. Behind him is Lynn Town, our board clerk. To my immediate right is Lisa May, board member. To my far left is Dr. Cook, our superintendent. And then 2 down is Tambra Pickford, board member. And also then to my immediate left is Rebecca Smith, vice chair. And then I am Jennifer Brumley, the chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of the meeting. I think most of you know this, but please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board by email at trustees@cdaschools.org. or in writing through the clerk if you would like to do that. So our first item this evening is going to be our board recognition, and we have a few individuals we're recognizing tonight, so I will turn this over to Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair Brumley. At this time, I'd like to start off with our recognition for our high school athletic directors, and I see them hiding out there, so I'm going to ask them to walk in. Front and center, gentlemen. And I was teasing them out in the foyer because the most highly decorated people in the school district are always your high school athletic directors. And that's actually the worst statement in the world. Nobody ever calls them unless there's a problem with officials, their kid's not getting enough playing time, or they don't like a coaching decision. So the fact that we're going to recognize the work and efforts of our athletic directors this year is very unique to this school district. And I cannot tell you how proud I am of both of them to get us through this pandemic this year. It is, as we all know, has been an extremely challenging year, and the fact that we had essentially all sports all year long is just an amazing accomplishment. So I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent, Kelly Nichols, to take this further.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. Okay, Jim, I'm going to make you wait. Mike, let's start with you. So you guys, we were in the middle of a global pandemic. There are schools across this country that aren't even in classrooms yet. And our students and our community played sports all the way through this entire year. We had wrestling, we had basketball and football and soccer and all the wonderful things that we do. And I have to tell you, I live on the other side of the state line, and I was really excited to brag about our sports teams and like, oh, well, we're in season. And it took an incredible amount of work, And long ago in August, these 2 guys and some other folks came together with me, brand new to the district, trying to figure out how we're going to have sports seasons in the middle of a global pandemic, and we figured it out. And you guys worked so well together. You guys worked so well for all of your students, and most importantly for your athletes and for your coaches. Mike, I appreciate your patience and your advocacy, not only through the global pandemic, but for all of your sports programs, facilities, all of the work that you do. And you're, like, in addition, a full-time assistant principal, doing evaluations, supporting your teachers, supporting your students. So I'm very grateful for your time, I'm very grateful for your energy, and I'm very grateful for what you've pulled off with our teams. Jim, we're recognizing you today because you're amazing. I love Jim. He's my favorite student that you're not supposed to have, but you totally have anyways. And same thing, very, very, very grateful for your support for all of your advocacy for your athletes, for all the work that you do for Lake City, for all the work that you do for our entire community. I appreciate the advocacy you have with your other athletic directors in our community. I know the kinds of conversations you guys had and the ways that you're just no nonsense. What do we have to do to make this work? That's just a wonderful way to be, and I absolutely applaud all the work that you've done and what you've been able to make happen this year. Thank you, Jim. Oh, wait. I think there's going to be a picture. Hold on. Maybe not. He's gone. We've lost him. Did we lose him?
Well, they got a bigger ovation out there. Okay. So next, I will turn it over to Tambra to talk about our District Teachers of the Year.
We had celebrations, I believe it was last week. I'm not sure the exact dates, but our Teachers of the Year throughout our district for elementary is Amy Wise, and she teaches 4th grade at Atlas Elementary School. Our middle school Teacher of the Year is Lisa Barnett, and she's a 6th grade teacher at Lakes Middle School. And our last Teacher of the Year is our high school Teacher of the Year. She's a choir director at Lake City High School, Brittany Fundheller. I remember when she was at Woodland and she was going to be going to Lake City, I was like, you're going to look like one of the students walking around there. I don't know if you've ever seen her, but she probably looks like one of the students walking around. But congratulations to all of our wonderful Teachers of the Year. So let's give them a round of applause.
And our last board recognition, I'll call Jeff Voller.
This will be a hard one for me, so bear with me. We wanted to take a moment today to just reflect on the loss that the district recently experienced with the sudden passing of our transportation director, Jill Hale. Jill spent the last 25 years serving the students, families, and staff of our district. Jill began working for the district in 1996. She spent the first 10 years as a bus driver. She would often tell stories of her time driving in our weekly meetings, and I so much enjoyed hearing those stories of her time when she was driving. In May of 2006, she was promoted to the transportation director. Jill was passionate about transportation and spent her life surrounded by buses. She kept a detailed map of all the routes in her head. It was amazing to hear her talk about, she could name any street in this community and just name it off the top of her head and tell you which bus went to that route and what it served and who the driver was. Her greatest attribute was her desire to serve others. She went to great lengths to meet the needs of students and families across the district. Jill's goal was for her department to be a model for other school districts in Idaho. Over the past few years, she worked tirelessly to implement new technology in transportation, most notably a new routing system to improve our efficiencies. Jill cared deeply about her staff, often connecting through potluck lunches. She would spend hours preparing specialty dishes to share, and she was quite an accomplished cook. She was optimistic and excited about the direction her team was moving, and she focused on helping each employee be successful as her department embraced big change. Just last June, our Board of Trustees presented Jill and her team with its Award of Excellence for all of the great work that the Transportation Department has done through the pandemic. Also in 2018, Jill accepted the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce A+ Education Award on behalf of the Transportation Department in honor of the work that she and her entire team had been working on over the last several years. I wanted to share just a few comments that we received from some community members when we sent a message out. Jill was a wonderful lady. My daughter has special needs. She made me comfortable that my girl would be safe on the bus. A true loss for the community and everyone she knew. Another one, she was truly an incredible lady. She was indeed helpful from the day my family relocated here. She listened to my concerns and was always helpful. She accommodated our needs every time. She was very genuine and kind. And another one here. I'm so sad to hear about Jill. I worked with her a lot in the life skills students, and my heart is broken. She was so kind, graceful, and happy. She made her job look easy when I know it was just the opposite. She was such a pleasure to work with, and the district and her family will miss her greatly. And one final one. Her kindness, her care, her genuine love for her children showed every day. We'll miss Jill. No one can replace her, but I hope we get someone who has a large heart and a caring nature Jill did. Thank you from all of us who lived, whose lives she touched, especially the children. And I would echo that. To the family of Jill, we extend our condolence and express our sincere gratitude and the appreciation for all that Jill did. We're grateful to have worked with her and to have called her a friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I know that wasn't easy. There are moments in time where it's really nice to have a mask on. Oh, and yes, on behalf of the board, just to extend to Jill's family our condolences and our gratitude and our thank you for everything that she has done. Okay, board trustee comments. I was just going to briefly share. I know this has been in the paper and it's been out by the school district, but we have hired a new superintendent. His name is Sean Hawker. He hails from Dickerson, North Dakota. He comes to us with 14 years of experience as a superintendent. He also, although that superintendent experience was not in the state of Idaho, he is from Idaho. He was a teacher in Idaho, down in southern Idaho. He was an administrator in Idaho. His intention always in his aspirations in being a superintendent was to return to Idaho, particularly Coeur d'Alene, frankly. And so he is very excited about the opportunity to come here. He spent 11 years in one district, and I firmly believe that he is here to stay and retire here. And we're very fortunate to have him joining us. And he'll officially start July 1. I know he is coming to visit the school district prior to that start, and we just look forward to having him. And then Trustee Morris-Rowe had a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Brumley. Just real quickly, I wanted to bring up a policy that we amended last year. It was 3010, and it's policy around open enrollment. And I believe it was about this time last year that we made some changes to that policy. And of course, we're just now going through reapplications for open enrollment. And at the time, at least by my memory, when it came to high school, the board kind of talked about, once a student had completed an open enrollment transfer, that they wouldn't have to continue to apply each year. And I think up against that was Idaho code that requires annual application. And so we put a policy together that tried to weave those two things together. And I'm just wondering if perhaps it's a little too gray and open to interpretation. Just wondering if the board would entertain us looking at that policy again. I had several calls recently, and I know Trustee made it as well. And I see Ms. Pickford shaking her head just around that people thought, okay, once I'm in, I'm in. And that wasn't necessarily the message we put out. And I understand why we put that out, because there's no guarantees in life, I guess. And so I just wonder if we need to look at that and see if we can clean it up and make our intentions a little clearer. So
Okay.
really just a request to see if we want to do that next month or in the future.
Is everybody open to putting that on our agenda for our June meeting? Okay.
Yeah, and I think it should be something simple as a recommendation from admin. I think we can go back and get the minutes, but I think our comments were pretty clear during that discussion, and so maybe just following the guidance that from about a year ago. I don't know if it could be written in through procedure, but if it came with a recommendation from you guys, that would be great.
We will take a couple of stabs at it and get it in front of you guys. Be glad to.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cook. Student body reports. Our first up tonight is going to be Lake City High School.
Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Cook, and district administration. My name is Lucy Dixon, and I'm the ASB president at Lake City High School. Here with me tonight is ASB Vice President Jordan Lyon and ASB Treasurer Brenna Hawkins.
We had a very busy month at Lake City. Our theater department put on 2 productions, Clue on Stage and Death by Chocolate, which were both very funny, entertaining, and well produced. Huge congratulations to Mr. Bell and our theater students for their 2 jobs well done. We would also like to give a shout out to Olivia Duco for getting 4th place overall in the dramatic interpretation at speech debate competition. Way to go, Olivia.
We had the opportunity to host 2 events last month. Our annual Spike and Stuff co-ed volleyball tournament was last week, and it was a blast to be able to get our students together again for some fun and craziness. We also hosted senior prom on Saturday, and it was an absolutely beautiful event. Our Enchanted Garden theme was magical, and our seniors were so happy to be able to create some truly incredible memories. Coming up next, we're excited to be planning a special Senior See Ya event for our seniors this month. We also have senior projects coming up on May 26th, and we're planning a lovely graduation ceremony for June 12th as well. Finally, we had our ASB elections last month, and we're so excited to be able to introduce to you our new ASB officers for the 2021 to 2022 school year. ASB President Hayden Stone, ASB Vice President Amber Idema, ASB Secretary Hannah Stoddard, and ASB Treasurer Court Weber. It's been our honor and privilege to serve as ASB officers this year, and we know we're leaving our school in good hands with these new officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this year, and we wish you all the best of luck next year.
Okay, thank you, Lake City High School. Next is Coeur d'Alene High School.
Good evening, esteemed Board Chair, Honorable Trustees, Superintendent Cook, District Administration, and valued community members. My name is Alexi Wilson. I'm the ASB Secretary. With me tonight, Mackenzie Mattis, ASB Vice President, Lexi Hildreth, ASB Treasurer, and Holly Hudson, ASB President. Our student body is looking forward to what is coming, and we are all ready for our spring events.
Hello everyone, it's Lexi Hildreth, ASB Treasurer. We have some exciting events coming up in the month of May. We're excited to introduce the Father-Son Barbecue being put on by the freshmen and sophomores. We've never had this event before, and they're doing a really good job preparing for it. We also have prom on May 7th, and we're really excited to see this all the final events and everything be put together for it. May 28th, we have Mr. CHS, and we're excited to see all of our boys compete for the title of Mr. CHS. And then to wrap it all up, we have graduation on June 11th, and we'll be really happy to see all of our work for the year of 2020 to 2021 come together with an amazing graduation.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Mattis, ASB Vice President. This past month, we had our volleyball Buff and Tough tournament, our mother-daughter tea, our senior sunset dinner, and held our ASB elections for next year. We also began practices for our Mr. CHS competition coming up at the end of May. Next, you'll be hearing from ASB President Holly Hudson.
Hi, my name is Holly Hudson, and I am the ASB President. This past month, it has been great to be a Viking. Our sports have taken home a few first-place trophies. Our Viking mathletes have won their math competition at NIC for the past 2 weeks. And we'd like to congratulate our very own Lexi Hildreth and Caden Skaggs for being the only students in Idaho to be called back to finals after their performance at the International DECA Conference. Congratulations to all the Vikings that competed at this event. And finally, we'd like to congratulate our new upcoming ASB team that was just recently elected. Maya Reitz, President, Ellie Morrisroe, Vice President, Gracie Shaver, Secretary, and Austin Smith, Treasurer.
Thank you to the school board and my ASB team. I know we're all looking forward to what is coming this next month.
Well, thank you, Coeur d'Alene High School. Next is K-Tech.
Hi, I'm Tyler from K-Tech, the auto program. I'm Kyle, auto program. Right now, we're kind of just working on getting some of the customer cars wrapped up and out of the shop so they're ready to go for summer and they're not just sitting in there for a while.
And we're also in the process of doing our ASC certifications and forklift certifications.
I think K-Tech to me means future opportunities that help me get a job and help me get into the industry I want to go into and help me get the training I needed to be successful in that field.
K-Tech to me is more of a an opportunity to show my skill and to improve my skill, and it is partially my passion, so it's basically my life, is working on it.
Tyler, what are you doing after you graduate from high school?
After I graduate, I'll be going to the College of Southern Idaho into the ACEP program, which is the GM Certified Technician program.
Kyle?
I am going to go to EMT school at the NIC Workforce Training Center, and then after that I'll work as EMT.
Right on.
Thank you to K-Tech. All right, we next up have our SAG leadership report, and this evening we have Helena O'Brien and Austin Smith with us.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. We have prepared a presentation for this one, so yeah. Awesome. Do we want to?
So I'd like to start off with a quote from my favorite U.S. president. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. So right now we're still in that axe sharpening phase. We're doing a lot of defining, a lot of hard work to just set up the structures for next year.
All right. So some of the stuff we have already done, we have put some suggestion boxes in the schools just to get input from the students that we represent on what they want us to kind of focus on, what they believe is important to them, so we can make sure we fully represent them. And the consensus on the mask policy, we've been kind of watching that play out and seeing from a student's perspective how that's been in the schools. We have been kind of analyzing the superintendent search help. I'm so glad that we found an amazing replacement. I'm so sorry that Stephen Cook is going to be leaving us, but I believe that our upcoming representative will be perfect for that. And then elected SAG leadership, obviously me and Austin are here, and we had Ainsley here last time. I know that the board members and anyone else who was here last time got to see Ainsley working, so.
So next about where we're going, we have a retreat planned for Wednesday the 26th, I believe, of May. We're hoping to work on defining some mission and vision statements, doing a lot of that axe sharpening then is our hope. We're also working on redefining and sharpening that application process, and we're hoping to get some new members in for next year. And then finally, we've been working very hard with our district board liaison to try to work on creating bylaws and some hard policies for the SAG.
All right. The SAG believes that the school scheduling discussion impacts students enough to warrant SAG input. SAG representatives were invited to a meeting on March 8th, but we have not heard back from the committee since then. I know that other than the kind of SAG updates, we haven't really talked or established for an input period for SAG members, and I know that it is brand new, but we would really love to be a part of decisions like this in the future or anything like that.
I think Ms. Nichols back there will take note of that.
Awesome.
We're also still trying to figure out the SAG's place with the board. We've given oral presentations, we've given written testimonies, and now we're giving a slideshow presentation. So we're still working out what works best for how we can present to you the student input. So is it working? Are we doing good? Doing good? Okay.
All right, so kind of in conclusion, we are still sharpening the axe. We're in the preparation stages. We're kind of figuring out as we go along, and I'd like to thank you guys for working with us in that situation. But we're so excited to work and collaborate with the district more in the process, so thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you very much, Helena and Austin, for being here and obviously taking the time to put together that presentation. And yes, I think it's working, and we're continuing. We're looking forward to continuing and seeing what you guys bring forward.
I will say that I promised them we'll get them a better seat at the next meeting. It's difficult for them to watch the presentations, so we're working on it. And I'm excited for all the hard work they're doing. They're preparing some bylaws that I told them the board will need to approve, but we'll probably expect those before the fall school year starts. So great job to you guys tonight. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Trustee May, for your work with them. Okay, next is our CEA report. I believe Ms. Ziegler is here in person. Wonderful.
If I remember how to do this.
It should have a red light if I'm...
I think so. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Board Chair Brumley, esteemed members of the board, Superintendent Cook, Ms. Town, our district employees, and the public. Thank you for having me here this evening. It's nice to be back in person. As we have worked our way through our pandemic school year, we have come to the best time of year where we get to celebrate those who are retiring and our teachers of the year. I would love to take a moment to give a shout out and a congratulations to our wonderful teachers of the year. We have Amy Wise at the elementary level, Brittany Fundheller for high school, and Lisa Barnett for the middle school. So congratulations to those ladies. Each one of them is very deserving of that award and the amazing work that they do with our students. I would just like to publicly thank them for their passion towards teaching and education and for being an inspiration to so many of us. Next, I would like to share our plans for our retirement dinner. Normally at this time of year, we would be having that dinner and hosting that dinner this week because it is Teacher Appreciation Week. This year was being so different, we decided to forego the dinner for one more year and continue with our celebratory magazine, much like we did last year. That magazine will be published near the end of May and will honor our retirees, our teachers of the year, and the CEA Friend in Education. One last thing this evening, please make sure to take a moment this week to send a shout out to our teachers for all the hard work that they do as it is Teacher Appreciation Week. And thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you for coming tonight. All right, next on our agenda is public comment. I just have a little spiel to read to all of you before public comment, and we do have a number for this evening, but I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it's not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during this public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to be presented to the board, you may provide those comments in writing to the clerk of the board, Lynn Town. Ms. Town will ensure the board members receive those additional comments. Please keep in mind that the board members will not respond to public comment if I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive. I may terminate the speaker's privilege to address the board. And while I don't typically monitor time a lot, we have 8 folks signed up tonight. And so I just would ask, out of respect for everyone's time this evening, we still have a lot of business to conduct, that each individual that is presenting public comment would keep it to that 3 minutes. And so with that, I have the first person listed on there. Is it Sierra Holt? Okay, Sierra, go ahead.
I would first like to thank the Board of Trustees and Superintendent Dr. Cook. My name is Sierra Holt, and I am here to talk about the schedule proposition for the high schools. I just wanted to advocate for the block schedule because I personally have attended Charter Academy, where I went through the 6 and 7 period a day schedule, as well as the block schedule, and the block schedule has far more prepared me for college. The block schedule allows more opportunity in the arts and language departments along with electives. Now, if I were to be a junior and still taking a language credit, I would not have the same choice to be able to have any arts programs in my schedule if I were to be at a different school on the 8 day 8 classes a day schedule. The block schedule allows more dual credit opportunity, and without the time that the block schedule allows, I would not be able to take any of my college classes that are further preparing me for my career. More teacher connections can occur because we are actually able to have closer relationships with our teachers due to the fact that we can connect our learning back to what is actually happening in real life. I was not able to form nearly as many relationships or deep of relationships with my teacher when I was on day-to-day schedule, even though I did see them every day. Finally, I would really like to address how much the block schedule does ease the transition into college, because unlike high school where we have 8 classes a day sometimes, college you do not get to see your teachers every single day, and it requires an immense amount of planning and time management. The block schedule has helped me further manage my time and also make sure I prioritize my communications with my teachers on the scheduled days that I have them. I would also like to bring attention to the fact that the music program at Lake City would not be able to have nearly as many opportunities, as I myself am a member of the music program and am in the orchestra, band, stomp, and jazz band groups and other extra groups. I would not be able to have the opportunities I currently have for what I'm going to do in college if I did not have the block schedule, and I would have not been able to do it without the block schedule. So I would just really appreciate if you could consider that the student's perspective is that we have a lot more opportunities and time management skills. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sierra. That's not an easy thing to do, to get up in front of all these folks. So thank you for sharing your comments. Emma Cruz, did I say that right? Yes. Okay.
I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to move this off the phone. Open. Can you open this? It's not. Okay. Dear members of the board and Superintendent Cook, thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak tonight. Hello, my name is Emma Cruz, and I'm a freshman at Lake City High School. Over the course of a month and a half, my design thinking class has worked on the impact of high school schedules. Over this period of time, our classes found that the current block schedule is the best option. We came to this conclusion by interviewing students and staff throughout our school, reading paragraphs through books on what school could be, and carefully analyzing each schedule and all of its options thoroughly. On top of that, we are currently working with CHS and Venture to fully hear the other side of the story. With all of this knowledge, our hope is to come up with innovative ways to keep the block schedule, but also make the appropriate improvements. We have found that not only is this option simpler to follow, but it provides more opportunities and provides students with learning disabilities extra time to learn and grow. Of course, there are some negatives. We have found that some students look through their list of extracurricular activities and either don't find anything interesting and end up retaking a class, or the interesting class is full and they're forced to take something different. But our staff at Lake City are working to find ways to combat this issue, including creating a survey for students to record the electives they would like to be added to their list of electives, and creating an adaptive team of teachers who are sharing workshop models of instruction with other teachers on staff to enhance and refine practices in the block schedule. But our original rollover block isn't the only block schedule option there is. There is also the 4-day block model that also allows a flex day for students to have contact with teachers, study groups, and online learning, or it can be a 5-day week with a modified 5th day, with week 1 being AB, ABA, and week 2 being ABA, BB. With all of these things in mind, I have full confidence that this schedule could be a healthy change for CHS and a good improvement for Lake City. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for your time in this opportunity. I hope to do this again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Again, I know that's not easy, so congratulations for having the courage to come up here. Kennedy Krajak. Did I say that right? Okay.
Hello and good afternoon, board members, Chair Brumley, and Superintendent Cook. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kennedy Krajak, and I'm a senior at Lake City High School. Today, I will be speaking on behalf of the students at Lake City. I present myself today in efforts to show support for our staff of Lake City High School. There is not one place I can name with more people that care about their students. I can tell you numerous times that the staff of Lake City High School have been an outlet for me to be who I am, truly in and out. I would stand here today for the rest of the night listing off teachers name by name, counselor, or staff member personally that made an impact on my life. There is nowhere I would rather be than here tonight vouching for the people that have helped me grow for the past 4 years of my life. I stand here today in full belief that the people that work every day inside of 6101 North Ramsey Road are the best, most caring people on planet Earth, and I would not have rather spent the last 4 years of my life anywhere else. To be here today is an honor. I appreciate that you allowed me to speak about the people that I love, and I'm glad to be able to stand here and remind you today of these amazing people. To have the opportunity to be able to speak, to be able to be in the school currently 5 days a week while the teachers and staff work harder than I've ever seen them work on behalf of their students is incredible. I have rarely seen a group of people work as hard as the staff of Lake City High School has during this school year. I am a proud Timberwolf, and seeing the support before this meeting of the teachers and the staff standing outside this building prove exactly my point. This school is a representation of people that care about every individual that attends. Miss Clifford is someone I've known actively since I was 14 years old, and to be able to stand here today and watch her leadership radiate throughout my school is one of the things I'm most grateful to leave with from my high school experience. I am proud to be able to sit here and speak on behalf of the student body of Lake City, and I know everything that I spoke about today, I have the entire student body right behind me. Lake City High School is made up of staff who care more about their students than anything else, and I came here today to remind you, the school board, and our community listening of just that. I am proud to be a Lake City student because of the staff that work there every day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. All right, Constance Bond.
Thank you, Madam Chair Brumley, and each of you esteemed Board of Trustee members and Dr. Cook. I appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of all current and future students. My deepest desire is to honor what we worked so hard to create, which is Portrait of a Graduate. That is my deepest desire, is to fulfill what we worked to create in the hopes that each student has every opportunity to achieve their dreams, their goals, their hopes, and to live an extraordinary life, hopefully here in Northern Idaho. I believe that in the best interest of all students, current and future, it would behoove us to go ahead and reach out and see if there are any statistics that we can find as to what would be the best option for each student. We have reached out to many different professionals for different things over the course of the last couple of years, and the results have been fantastic. And I would like to see that continued, so that way we can best represent our community, our teachers, our love of our students. And I appreciate this time and each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Constance. Jamie Essler.
No? Okay.
Madam Chair, esteemed members of the board, Dr. Cook, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I am here to present a letter that was jointly written by the staff of Lake City High School, signed by many members of the staff of the high school, and I would like to read it to you now. There is an important and very sensitive reason that members of our staff are present at tonight's board meeting. On Monday, April 19th, 2021, comments were recorded in the public record from this board that left each of us standing outside tonight feeling disheartened and demoralized. We were both surprised and disappointed to hear how our staff was described by an elected representative of our school board. We were mischaracterized and inaccurately represented to our community, who may have viewed this board meeting. We stand united before you to demonstrate that these comments do not accurately represent the work that we do every day. We would like to take this opportunity to set the record straight and correct the inaccurate statements that were made using the very same public forum in which it was originally presented, so that community members do not hold judgments against us based on misinformation. As teachers, we do not permit our students to present or even submit work that is not properly cited and sufficiently researched. There were no grounds or data demonstrated to support the comments that were made on April 19th. They were unsubstantiated. To clarify, there is a distinct, qualitative, and intricate difference between guided practice, cognitive discourse, peer collaboration, and independent practice with options for support, all of which take place in school, as well as homework practice, study, or review. We are very intentional with these practices. It is not something that other professionals outside of the realm of public education understand unless further explained. So please allow me to clarify. There are very different purposes for these two kinds of schoolwork. In a sense, it's like the work that is done in physical therapy. Some work must be taught, supervised, remediated, enhanced, challenged, and assessed with the practitioner present to oversee the process, and then the work can be continued at home to practice and strengthen these skills. But these strides cannot be made in the absence of guided practice first. Otherwise, we risk injury, or in the case of education, misunderstanding and incomprehension of materials at the outset. We encourage and cordially request that any further discussion by the board about our staff or our school be done in the same way that we expect of our own students to present information to us in the classroom, using sound evidence and reasoning to back up claims. We also encourage the board to use their position to serve as a better role model for how this kind of discussion should be expected to take place in a public and professional setting. This will allow our students and their families to have the opportunity to see the value of these skills demonstrated and practiced in the real world. We invite board members to please come spend more time in our classrooms, preferably over the course of several full school days, to get a better sense of how hard we work, how much we care about our students, how much time we truly invest, and how dedicated we are to the goals and to the vision of Coeur d'Alene School District 271. Thank you for your time this evening. Shall I present this to you, Madam Chair, or Ms. Town?
I would give it to Ms. Town, and she'll distribute it to us, but thank you very much, Jamie. Oh, that didn't come through. Matt Werner. Sorry, Matt.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Good evening, Chair Brumley, Superintendent Cook, and members of the board. My name is Matt Werner, and I teach at Lake City. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the board's defense of instructional minutes, especially in my subject area, math. I've been a math teacher, remedial math teacher most of my career, and at times skeptical of the block because students need more math every day, whether they like it or not, and those really behind, well, they need it twice a day, every day, and louder. Just kidding, of course. But you can ask my building principal how much I do protect my instructional minutes. So thank you, members of the board, for speaking up on behalf of instructional minutes. It wasn't until I transferred to Lake City that it became clear that students weren't waking up at 6 a.m. to attend my math lessons. They came for the outdoor studies program, instrumental ensemble, and their favorite AP programs. They basically tolerated my content because they had choice and opportunities in how their high school schedule was constructed. Opportunities. Our Lake City High School math team prides itself on double-digit growth. We excel in growth measured from when a student starts as a freshman and graduates as a senior. Board of Trustees, please protect my instructional minutes. Dio, earmuffs, please. Board of Trustees, please don't let my instructional minutes be eaten up in advisory and flex time. All right, you can take the earmuffs off. By the way, I'm fully open to the idea of advisory and flex time. Having said all this, please don't discount my ability to hold a math class attention, deliver content, and make an excellent use of my block minutes when it comes to math instruction. Math was not a favorite of mine in high school. It was not until college, when I only met in math class every other day, that I took a liking to it. So for every time I wished I was seeing my students every day, thinking this was the golden ticket to higher standardized math scores, I remember my own math journey to proficiency, wishing I had had the same high school math experience as my students are experiencing today at Lake City High School. Trustee May, you are 100% correct. CHS's high school schedule is not broken. The quality of graduates that CHS has produced through the years is to be commended. And the same is to be said for Lake City High School. Just because some audit noticed a discrepancy between our two great high schools does not mean this district must turn itself into a twice-baked, triple-dipped, pickled state fair food truck special, giving everyone a stomachache. We have two great high schools in their own rights. One schedule won't aid them in each becoming more exceptional, just more common. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Patrick O'Shea.
Everyone hear me okay? I'm good? Okay, I would first like to start off by thanking everybody for their time and their effort. And I am here simply to advocate for the block schedule. And this is predominantly from my own personal experience. I have had several classes that, in my experience, would not be possible without the block. Specifically, my survival science class, which is, in my personal opinion, the most practical one of my classes, it would not be possible without the block due to the extended time. Because without having a longer class period to do the scenarios and do other activities, I would not be able to get that learning opportunity. As for the concerns for inefficient use of that time, so long as the teacher understands what they're doing when they're doing it, they can effectively keep the attention of students. I've seen Werner teach our math class very effectively, and he uses homework as an instructional time and an instructional tool. And for the kids who can't do it in class, they can do it at home. And me being someone who's too busy to do stuff at home, I get to have an incredibly busy schedule with the block because I have opportunities to do homework in class, and I still get to learn and still get to have instructional time. And not every class has homework, and not every class has homework in class. And if homework in class would be more efficient out of class, the teachers tend to know that, and they'll typically abstain from doing so. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Justine Trevino.
Hi. I just want to say thank you to the board members, Chair Brunley and Superintendent Cook for having me here today.
I'm Justine Trevino. I'm a junior at Lake City High School, and I am here to speak on behalf of the block schedule and the students and staff at Lake City. Growing up and just having the middle school schedule, I never really was able to comprehend a lot of stuff with the short class periods that we had. And as soon as I moved to Lake City during freshman year, I had a clear, I very much excelled in all of my subjects because I had more time instruction in class. And I really believe that it presents so many good opportunities as far as NIC, U of I, K-Tech, and all the time that we have to leave to go to those classes or all those classes that are hosted in Harvard in Lake City High School. I really also have been able to form so many good student connections with my fellow students and with teachers because of the time that we have in class to get to know each other and bond. There are classes where some of the people, we come from very different backgrounds, different beliefs and stuff, but in that class we are one class and we all interact, we have great classes together, and I've never had classes like that up until high school and especially this year. And I really am appreciative of the staff members who I've, the teachers that I've had throughout the years because they've helped me immensely through school, and I feel so much more comfortable with them, going to them and speaking about myself and being like, hey, I need more time, or hey, they've never made me feel uncomfortable. They've never made me feel they've helped me no matter if I ask for help, they're very ready to provide it, and I've never had that type of relationship with a teacher and with fellow students up until now. And the staff in the office is absolutely incredible and supportive, and if you need anything, you can go to them, and I would not be as comfortable as I am now without the block schedule providing me this time to spend time with them and get to know them beyond a student-teacher relationship. And so that's just what I'm here to speak up about today. I really believe that it's a truly beneficial schedule to have, and that Lake City would not be it and not have the staff and student connections without it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Justine. I didn't say this to Patrick, but I'll say it to both Patrick and Justine again. Thank you both for coming. I know it's hard to get up in front of a group of adults and speak. And so I didn't give the teachers the accolades because they can do it just fine. Okay, we have one last on our public comment, and that's Sean Glenn.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Sean Glenn. I'm the mother of 4, 2 of whom have graduated from Coeur d'Alene High School, and 2 of whom are going to graduate this spring, thanks be to God, from Lake City High School. And I first of all want to appreciate all of the teachers in all of the schools, especially in the last year. This has been a very challenging time for all of us, and so I want to say thank you to them. The second thing I'd like to point out is that sometimes I think we fall into a trap of either or, and I would like to caution the board against an either or approach to this, because as I'm sure you all know, and as I know our teachers know, each child learns differently. We can have a both and metric here. We can have a both and way to choose. I think having Coeur d'Alene High as the 8 classes a day and Lake City High in the block schedule gives freedom and flexibility and an excellent foundation to our students who we are getting prepared to launch into the future. As we know, anybody who's been a parent knows that, something shiny is going to take a kid's attention away from what's in front of them. And I think that it is important for the board to realize, and as I know the teachers and the students in Lake City realize, that when you have 8 classes during the day, you have a bunch of hungry, tired, social, hormone-ridden, probably, maybe not prepared, maybe worried about things at home kids going into a class, and let's just say graciously that it takes them 5 minutes to sit down and settle down before they can pay attention. You've got a 40-minute class, maybe a 45-minute class, and then they've got 5 minutes to get all their stuff ready, and they're getting up and getting out. And then they've got maybe 5 minutes to get from one side of the campus to the other to go to class. If you multiply those 15 minutes times 8 classes, now, caution, I am not a math person. I'm a lawyer. I got a political science degree. Someone else can do the math. But it is at least 6 hours a week. 6 hours a week that these kids are spending going from one class to another and withdrawing their attention from places where they can be learning better. A block schedule, ladies and gentlemen, not only allows the teachers more one-on-one opportunity to speak with their students who need their help, to find students that maybe need to be referred to a counselor, but also to set the other students on the path of, this is the task for the day, this is the goal for the day. You can work independently while I, the teacher, have the opportunity to go to each individual student and find out what they need to succeed. And isn't that our goal as parent educators, as teacher educators, as student educators, and as the board supervising the educators? To find out how each student learns the best and to foster that. I propose to you that not only does the block schedule help in remediating, it helps children who are going to be grown-ups have the freedom to excel, have the freedom to say, I need to go and talk to teacher X. Can I be excused because this is their time period? And they can leave and get extra help during their class times in a block schedule. It promotes concentration when someone has an hour or more to sit there and learn about trigonometry or chemistry or world history or music. That gives them the opportunity to really have it soak into their brains and not think, oh, 30 minutes is lunch. Another 30 minutes, I'm going to be leaving to someplace else. We want to be able to afford them the opportunity to choose. Some children learn well, I'm sure, at Coeur d'Alene High. My girls did. The boys are thriving at Lake City High. I don't think either is bad. I think that it's important for this board to recognize that the freedom and the flexibility, we have the opportunity to choose both and continue the educational excellence that we're providing here at School District 271. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. All right, well, thank you everyone for your public comment tonight. That then moves us into our consent agenda. Do I have a motion with regards to our consent agenda as there's a mass exodus?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Next is our consent agenda items for information. Does anybody have any comment or questions with regards to our consent agenda items for information? All right, hearing none, I will move on. So she's already up at the podium, our finance report. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair Brumley, Board of Trustees. I heard the applause as I was walking up, so
yes,
everybody's really excited for this report. So just an update tonight on our budgeting process. So we had our first budget subcommittee meeting last Wednesday, I believe it was, and we went over just a pretty 10,000-foot level of the budget process and talked a little bit about how it's going to be a little bit different this year as far as our former budgeting methods basing on prior year activity isn't so easy when you have a very abnormal year and you're hoping that next year is going to look a little bit normal. So it's going to be a little bit of a process this year to sort of land on where we're going to be at it in regards to revenues and expenditures. We discussed ending fund balance, and we are projecting at this time a deficit of about $500,000 to $1 million. And this shouldn't come as a surprise. We talked throughout the spring about the Governor Little's change to discretionary funding, which is going to net with recognizing steps in lane or recognizing movement on the career ladder. So there are pieces coming together with the budget that is going to likely net us up to $1 million. And the reason why we have such a wide range has to do with year-end purchases. We may have some year-end purchases that don't make the cutoff. A lot of times we make large purchases in the spring because we want staff to be free to be able to process, textbooks, technology. So that can make fund balance vary, as well as how the governor's changes affect us as the year closes out. So in the budget subcommittee, we talked very briefly about ESSER funds, and we had a meeting with our district leadership team. We were hoping to have CEA representation, but Kim wasn't able to make it to that. But we had a meeting on last Thursday and discussed sort of an overview as far as the limitations to the funding, learning acceleration, also known as learning loss in the grant. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in tonight's agenda. So any questions on that? All right, thank you.
All right, that was quick, Katie. Thank you. I know you're coming back. All right, we have assessment and student achievement, which I'm going to presume that is Dr. Nelson. Did he hear me? I don't think he did.
I don't think he did.
Hey, Mike, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Chair Brumley, Superintendent Cook, members of the board, it's a pleasure to be seeing with you tonight. I have the honor to be able to present to you some data about two important measures. The first was one that may be a little bit beyond the radar, and it's our WIDA access surveys. And then finally, we'd like to also present you the data provided to us by our engagement surveys that are provided annually to students, staff, and parents. So the first thing that we're going to do is start talking to you about our WIDA access assessment. The WIDA assessment is actually an acronym. It stands for the states of Wisconsin, Delaware, and Arkansas. And it was adopted in the state of Idaho 5 years ago to identify the effectiveness of English language learning. You may know that we have a lot of students who come to us from different backgrounds and ethnicities. Some of them come with very little English language skill. Now, these students are still enrolled in mathematics, in science, in social studies, in electives, yet they have very limited English background. Put yourself in a situation like that. Right now, we have 102 students in our district that have a wide variety of early language skills. They may greet you and say hello in a variety of different ways, all shown off to the left-hand side. Some of the most popular languages that we serve are Mandarin Chinese, Czech, German, Hungarian, Korean, Norwegian, Punjabi, Portuguese, Romanian, Russian, Spanish, Thai, Ukrainian, and Vietnamese. To be able to serve those students in their developing skills, we have an amazing teacher, Ruth Hawley, and her colleague, Olivia Vetter, who serve those students in a pull-out fashion. So these students are still going to their normal classes, but they're receiving additional supports of instruction because, frankly, the best way to learn a second language is just to be in the area. So a lot of the students will develop their skills. But the state of Idaho wants us to make sure that this is not just an interpretive service or a tutoring opportunity, that the real goal is for our students of all grade levels to master the English language. So we provide additional supports to them during the day to be able to do that. And it's measured every year through an assessment called WIDA. The scores that I'm going to share with you provide a 6-level measure. The first, a level 1, entering. These are students whose skills are very, very new. 2, the green level, reaching, which means that these students have developed skills quality enough to be able to exit from language services. I'd like to present to you some data as to how our students performed in 2020. Unfortunately, our 2021 data is still about another 2 weeks behind, so I'll make sure I get it to you in a board note coming up shortly. But in the 2020 year, I'm pleased to tell you that almost 17% of our students were able to exit all services. And again, if you can think about the amount of time that a student learns throughout our district, that's actually pretty impressive. We had another almost 40% of students who are nearing completion of their programs. In this particular case, no students were marked as developing or bridging for the 2020 school year. When we do receive the results are shared with parents and guardians in a paper format, and we provide an interpretation guide in their home language. So again, not only are we providing a report to them in English, but also recognizing that if a student is developing their language, their parents and guardians are probably also developing their language. So we make sure that they understand what's going on as well. In addition, opportunities for us to talk with Mrs. Vetter and Mrs. Hawley about how are students performing. We go through meta results with them and also use them in the evaluation process. Results are also shared with our teachers. Our teaching staff are receiving these students. They know that their skills are developing. So we share with them how they are performing and find ways curricularly that we can bridge the gap as well. So that is a little bit of information about our WIDA results. I'd love to ask, do you have any questions about this component of my presentation? Seeing none. Let's move on to our engagement surveys. So as we discussed, the state of Idaho has a statewide accountability framework. In other words, they measure our students' performance via standardized tests, but they also look at how the feedback from our students, staff, and parents are impacting our decisions. So I'd like to give you a little bit of background about how we did those surveys. Again, there are 3 surveys: parent, staff, and student. Several months ago, our instructional core team and our cabinet team sat back and said, well, what are our goals? Certainly, we want this to be a fulfilling experience. We want to be able to use this data to make decisions. We set a goal of getting 20% feedback from all parents in the entire district. This year, we had 1,558 submissions, or about 24% survey return. From our staff, we wanted a goal of 90%. And that includes our classified staff as well. So we're not just interested in what our teaching staff feels, but the entire school community. We earned 882 submissions, or 69.94%. From our students, certainly, we'd love to know what they think. And again, all of these surveys give us open-ended comments as well. So it's not just a Likert scale, but they have the ability to give us some open-ended feedback as well. We were able to get just over 90%, almost 91%, where our goal was 95%. Again, all of these surveys are developed and researched by Cognia, which is the statewide partner. Now, I am going to share with you some comparisons here in a few moments, and I would like to give a little bit of a caveat to these. Keep in mind that year 2020, you're going to see our 2021 results compared, and the survey window is usually between February to early March. Do you happen to remember anything that was going on around February to early March last year? Our feedback may be skewed because of that time. Let's first talk a little bit about parents and what they thought about all of our work along the way. When a parent takes a survey, did all of you have an opportunity as parents in the district? Okay. When you receive the survey, you are given a question. The questions are detailed off to the left-hand side, and you're asked to provide a Likert score, a 1 to a 5. And the Likert scale is anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Certainly within our district, we would love to have our parents and guardians strongly agree or agree with the decisions that we're making. So the percentages that we're sharing with you tonight are the percentages of responses in the agree or strongly agree category. As you take a look up and down, you can see that our parents actually gave us a 2% higher review than the previous year. And we actually had some positive feedback continuing from school safety, from supports at home and resources, and that their child's principal is accessible. However, you may know that there's one glaring red spot on the chart, and that is the response to my child's school invites me to participate in school activities. I think we can all understand what circumstances may have prevented that from being much higher. In the parent survey as well, I also like to consider this next slide the Scott Maben slide, our amazing director of communications. It's how we best reach out to our families. So it was asked, how best should we communicate with you? And you can see by a large margin, our parents and guardians prefer emails from us, followed by text message, electronic newsletter, school website, and in-person meetings. Unfortunately, the United States Postal Service and school bulletin boards did not get very high marks this year. Let's get into the staff engagement survey. Again, we're looking at both classified and certified staff. And when we do disaggregate these reports for our schools, we do break them down. So our school staff gets an individual report, and they can break down the data to see what their classified or certified staff believes and try to make some comparisons along the way. I am very pleased to share with you that every one of our metrics were high this year, the highest that we have ever seen in the 3 years of giving these results. The greatest growth for us was that our school leaders provide sufficient time for staff to collaborate. That's that magical Wednesday time that they use to be able to jointly compare lessons, do collaborative team building. Additionally, our school is safe for staff and for students. We're both highly ranked, and that I feel valued at school. All very positive feedback from our staff. Our staff was also asked about the resources that support learning and the support that they have. I'm also pleased to tell you that every one of those metrics were higher as well, with 18% greater agreement that the school provides protects classroom time from disruption, that the school has enough support staff to be able to meet their needs, although you'll notice that that metric is still fairly low at 38%. That's nice to see that they are seeing an increase of those supports, and that our school facilities were very highly rated as well. In the support for staff, a 9% increase with feeling supported by school leaders when dealing with difficult situations. The final piece of feedback that we have for you is our staff engagement survey. Student. This survey is a slightly different. And the survey results that I'm going to present to you are broken down into 3 domains. A behavioral domain, identifying their effort and participation in activities. An emotional domain, which looks at feelings and connection with others. And a cognitive domain, looking at how engaged they are in the work of the class, in how they're monitoring their progress, and how they're able to reflect on the work. These surveys, again, were administered in 3 different levels. The grades 3 through 5 surveys are different. They're less mature, we'll say, more age appropriate in elementary school, and there's a different survey grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. And again, it is all based off of Cognia's Fusco and Hardy work. So here's what it shares with us. The first thing that you'll take a look here is the agreement in the behavioral, cognitive, and emotional. In our elementary schools, they gave higher marks than the previous 2 years in the behavioral and cognitive areas. However, throughout the board, this year was tough for our students emotionally. A 2% drop almost in elementary, a 14% drop in middle school, and a 9% drop in emotional at the high school. Unfortunately, in our middle schools and high schools, all 3 of those domains were lower over the previous year.
Mike, can you give me an example of like what kind of question they would be asked, and I have a hard time grasping what they're being asked or what's being.
Sure. Most of the questions are situational. And Chair Brumley, I did not actually bring the questions with me, but I could give you one extemporaneously. A question could be something like, when I am in class, I like to, and then the answers would be something such as engage in my work, daydream, think about what's next to come tonight, think about other activities. And all of those questions are backward mapped. All of those questions are freely available, and I'll be more than glad to be able to provide them for you. Is there a particular grade level band you'd like to take a look at?
Well, I was just curious of what kind of questions, the ones that we fell down on, particularly in the, in our emotional, with our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, what's being asked and what's causing that.
Sure, I will be more than glad to pass that on to you. Any other questions about any of those 3 sub-surveys, parent, staff, or student?
Mike, I had a question. It says on the bottom that this data is all released to the state, and we could go to the state website if we wanted to see how our students were doing. Is it possible, because right now I'm on the state website trying to look at it, and it's much harder to look at it this route than having you present it to us. So data that's reported to the state, could we have that broken out by school?
Yes.
Otherwise, we have to go to individual school and look that information up. So if it's being released to the state, it just gives us a heads up if community members have questions. I know we used to do that in the past, but we haven't seen that in quite some time. So state reported data would be helpful for us. Otherwise, it's really cumbersome to go back and try to look it up through the state's website.
Trustee May, I'm glad to be able to do that. I will work with Dr. Cook and Chair Brumley to make sure that you're provided that information. It happens, it happens. And Trustee May did bring up, this is information that we present to all of our buildings. In fact, just last week, we were all sitting in here with our building principals, and we were going over their school leadership plans. And we were talking about all of these different metrics that we have. Each of our buildings receives a comprehensive report as to how they perform. A copy of it is up in the upper left-hand corner, and it's broken down by a variety of domains. Again, it's not just our entire school community, but we want to see if there are any trends in subgroups such as grade levels, students with disabilities, free and reduced lunch, those types of things. I can tell you that our buildings, although the survey is flawed, every survey is flawed, our buildings do like being able to see how they're looking. So our school leadership plans are being developed right now with that, and summary results have already been shared within our own team, as well as our building leaders. In fact, there's a picture of our work just this last week as we go through that, and I would love to be able to stand for any further questions that you may have on these topics.
Can you kind of briefly did it there, but just describe how they're using the results of this and, how that goes into their planning for next year, and maybe they're keeping up something that seems to have worked positively or addressing concerns?
Yeah, Trustee Morrisroe, yes, our leadership plans are template-based, and the buildings have the opportunity to be able to follow multiple metrics that we have identified are important to us around the portrait of a graduate. However, they also have the ability to be able to identify their own domains and areas specific. So as a building is looking in, I was at Lakes Middle School for walkthroughs today, and I know that they focus a great deal on community at their building. So they can actually look at their engagement results, identify the areas of community, and pinpoint and target areas of that. I'm not completely sure how those plans will be helped or shared with you, but I do know that when we submit our district-wide leadership, our district-wide statewide plan in October, that our plan is going to be inherent based on all of those school plans. So I'll find out a way that we can share that information to you in a concise way so that you can see how we're using the data to be able to inform those decisions. Does that answer your question, Trustee Morrisroe? Thank you.
Dr. Cook, I guess one question I have then is, won't those school learning plans, just to tie this back together, those will each be posted for each school on their school websites eventually, won't they?
They will, yes.
So this information would be reflective in that for each school's individual plan.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nelson. All right, next is some action items. We'll starting with our Hayden Lake property. It looks like Jeff Fuller's on his way to the podium.
Good evening, Chair Brumley, members of the board. want to update you on the process for the sale of the Hayden Lake School. We had the public bid opening on Tuesday the 20th, and unfortunately, we received 2 bids, one from Aspen Homes and one from John Geddes. Unfortunately, both of the bids were well under the appraised value. So the board is not in a position where they're able to accept those bids because they came in under the appraised value, and so that's by state statute for us. So it's time for us to consider some next steps of what are the options moving forward with that property. I gave you a board memo that outlined several of the steps that for you guys to consider and contemplate as you are coming into this meeting. But in brief summary, the first step would be to just hold on the process and do nothing and just kind of leave the school as it is right now, or it would be to immediately put it out for rebid. And we could probably shrink up the timeline a little bit since we just went out for it and gave people plenty of time to do their due diligence on it. And I gave you a timeline in there. We are prepared right now to immediately take those steps if you guys are so inclined to move forward with going to out for rebid for a second time. And then in follow up with that, if we, after the second bid opening, if we still don't receive bids that are acceptable to the board, we can then go out for a public process of basically listing it on the active market and pursue the sale via any means that we so desire. So if we choose to do that, we are in a position right now that we're ready to take action on that right away, and it would go out this week. And so we would propose a bid opening of May 20th for that second go around if we do that. And if we do go that route, you guys will need to approve the bid package and the language in that I put into your board memo as well. So there's a few steps for you guys to do that. One thing to determine if we do go out for a second bid is probably to have a discussion on how we'd want to handle that. We could disclose the appraised value of the bid if we want to, or we could set a minimum bid amount, or we could just go with it as is with no disclosure of amounts and see where we come in on the second go around. So those are 3 options to consider as well. So any questions you guys have as we contemplate that moving forward?
I don't have questions. Well, I guess I maybe have one question in regards to that. Does administration have a recommendation of disclosing a minimum bid or the appraised value or not?
We've talked about that a little bit. I do think that it might be nice this second go around to maybe put a minimum bid amount that the board is comfortable with. To at least give people an idea of where we think those amounts should come in, of what the board would be, a starting place for, an acceptable bid amount that the board would consider. And remember, you're still not obligated to accept the bids even if they come in at that bid amount that we set as a bid minimum. But at least we know we're at a starting place where we're, in probably positive territory for giving strong consideration to where we'll be moving forward.
I think one thing that I heard from, just having my ears in the community is that a number of people, because of the way real estate's escalated around here in the last 6 months, there was some uneasiness with this bidding process and not knowing kind of where we were at. And to my understanding, a number of interested parties, ended up not submitting bids. Because of some of that uncertainty around the value and what it was. There were some big numbers, I think, thrown around amongst potential bidders of what this could have sold for, and obviously it didn't go there. So I think for me, I would support either a minimum bid or appraised value as the minimum bid. I think that just takes some of the guesswork out for folks. To set that minimum.
And then if this goes out again and we reject, then the next step would be that it could go on like MLS or something like that, correct? Opening it up to.
Correct. Okay. Yes.
Jeff, when was our appraisal done?
February. We reappraised it. Because of the time with the lag of the problems with the property lines that we had to have adjusted, we ran out of time because it has to be within a year. The appraisal has to be within a year of accepting the bids. And so it was February that it was reappraised.
I think the way the process works, so, we'd have to have a good faith reason to sell below appraised value, which we probably don't have at this point. But if you were to go to auction a couple of times and you didn't get there, then that may be your good faith reason that, hey, perhaps market value isn't aligned with appraised value. And so that's why they make you go through that public bid process a couple of times. I still think there's interest in this property out there. And, you know, I'd like to see us move forward with another bid.
I'd like to see us contract the timeline if possible, as you mentioned earlier, and also I think some sort of minimum bid would be in our best interest at this stage.
I'm not sure what kind of timeline, Lisa, are you
Well,
asking?
Mr. Buller mentioned that it's possible that you said the timeline could be shortened a tiny bit because.
Yeah, the earliest timeline I could do, the one we're prepared to put out if you guys elect to go that direction, would be we will notice the press tomorrow. It would go out on Thursday, would be the first public notice. Then the second would be the following Thursday, and then we could open bids a week after that. So that puts us at May 20th. So that's the most condensed timeline we could do.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
I would be inclined, obviously we want to put it back out to bid, and I think it's a good idea to give people a sense of what our minimum bid is. And I think our minimum bid should be 2 million.
Is there agreement on that? If there is, I could start reading these motions. Looks like there's 3 separate motions that would have to be approved.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
So I'll move that the board reject all bids from the initial bid opening because the board does not have the authority to accept bids under the appraised value on the first public bid solicitation, and for administration to return the bidder's security earnest money.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, and then we need to do the bid response form, is that right, Jeff?
I've got it there,
Okay.
the next motion. So I'll move that the board direct the administration to solicit sealed bids for the cash sale of the Hayden Lake School in accordance with Idaho Code 33601 to the highest bidder, which shall be subject to final approval of the Board of Trustees for a second time.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay, and then on this last one is 2 million, the number. I think Ms. Brumley threw out, Chair Brumley. Okay with that? Okay. So I move to approve the bid response form and include a minimum bid of $2 million.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Do you have everything you need from us, Jeff?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, trustee zone equalization agreement with ISBA. I'm going to guess that's Dr. Cook.
It's actually going to be Miss Town.
Oh, it's Miss Town. I apologize. I always like it. Well, you're not going to come out to the podium? You're going to... I always like it when you come out from behind us.
Oh my goodness.
I don't see. Probably.
Thank you. Speaking to you from the other side of the podium. So this is a process that we go through every 10 years. I was very involved in it 10 years ago when we do the census. And here we are following the 2020 census, and we find it's time to look at the trustee zone equalization process. And this is required by code that when the population, for whatever reason, could be through annexation, could be just through growth. When the population has changed enough that the trustee zones aren't in alignment, then this process is required, and each trustee zone must be within 10% population of the other trustee zones. So it's quite the process to go through, but it's very lengthy. And so for the first time, Idaho School Boards Association has sent a proposal, an agreement, where they will take this project on for us, working with a consultant company to do the mapping, to do the legal descriptions, and to get it to the state board for approval. And that would be my recommendation, is to enter into this agreement with ISBA for $4,350. They will do it all from start to finish. And it will come back to the board. The board will see the proposed maps and the proposed zone changes.
Ms. Town, could I ask a couple questions? Do you know when it'll come back to the board for approval? How long that takes?
I believe there's a timeline. I believe it's, I want to say 60 days.
Okay, and then how long does it take to go to state board? I guess what I'm wondering is, because you have trustee elections in November, if lines are changing, do they go in effect before then, after then? It seems like that could be a little tricky.
Now, that's a good question. I don't have the
changing
answer.
boundaries in the middle
don't-
of election time.
I don't
So-
know what the effective date is. I do know that as a result of the changes, if there ends up being 2 trustees in one zone, which could happen, there is a process for how a trustee is named. I apologize, I didn't read up enough on that code to be able to answer that specific question.
That may just be something we should make the public aware, maybe at our June meeting, of that process, because I think that did happen with NIC 10 years ago. It's hard to believe that was 10 years ago, but maybe they may have redistricted more recently than that. But I know they ended up with 2 folks in the same zone when a boundary changed, and one, I think, just chose to resign. Is how they ended up resolving it. But
And Ms. Town, I was curious if the state statute hadn't taken into consideration the change of election date for this process, so maybe some clarification, because isn't this a statute-driven process?
It is.
Coincides with the census, so, normally it wouldn't be an issue because we wouldn't have elections till May, but now that we've changed that, and I wonder if these 2 things just aren't synced up. So I think clarification sooner rather than later for all parties involved would be really beneficial and helpful.
I can do
elections would
some,
have been now, actually. It would have
I can
been
do some
this month.
research
Or next May.
and bring back some answers to those specific questions. I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great, Lynn. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any other questions or tasks for Lynn? All right, thank you very much, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Do I have a motion?
I'll do it. Motion to approve the agreement with the Idaho School Boards Association for the trustee zone equalization process.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you again, Lynn. All right, next up, we have our high school bell schedules. Miss Nichols.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair Brumley, Board of Trustees. I'm going to talk to you guys about our high school alignment work and hear where we are today and what we're hoping to accomplish over the next few weeks. Okay, so as you know, the last few meetings you have been very helpful in helping us focus our work to center some options and opportunities for our students that align with the previous work that we've been doing over the last few years, in addition to our current graduation requirement work and most particularly how we're trying to take our district forward in the alignment of a portrait of a graduate. And so with that, we are looking currently only at 7 and 8 period options Just to review that those options are all block period options. The 7 period is a modified block, but the block schedule or a block schedule is something that we are only exploring. And that we're selecting a schedule that facilitates integral learning. And what integral learning is, I think our committee is still trying to develop a consensus of that. As you can see, there are a lot of elements around opportunity and access that matter deeply to people, and we need to establish what is it that's integral for every student in Coeur d'Alene School District. We are prioritizing block options that incorporate time for deeper learning and exploration for students and staff, and that we also need to keep it practical. And so our last meeting, we spent a great deal of time clarifying our understanding of cost and the models that we've been reviewing, which, as you know, the practicality of cost is a big deal, and it's a little complicated. So we shared a model, and so we spent a lot of time talking about that model and what does that really mean in our day-to-day scheduling and budgeting. But that's where we are. So our last meeting really focused on those key things. We have scheduled some future meetings intensively over the next 3 weeks. So we have one each week. We have one on Wednesday, we have one on May 10th, and we have one on May 19th. Student advisory group, if we can get our stuff together, we hope to include you. We are also sharpening the axe in our committee work. And we're hopeful that you can join us at least on the 10th, if not for sure the 19th, for your feedback and expertise. And we're trying to formalize a schedule that's in alignment with our strategic priorities and portrait of our graduate outcomes. We are tasked with on Wednesday to really center our time focusing on some of those 7 period modified options that we have. We have, as you know, a rolling AB as one of our options for an 8 period block. And then Trustee Brumley, or Chair Brumley, shared with us some other options, and so we want to look further into those as well. But we really haven't talked significantly as a committee around our 7 period modified options, and so we're going to spend some time on May 5th really digging into those and seeing if there is one option or 2 options that we can look at more detailed, mostly in the sense of like, is there one that we would really, all of them, we would need to tweak to be very specific in that formalizing with our strategic priorities and portrait of a graduate outcome. And then we're hoping that we can, figure out an 8 period block as well. That's a good option that we'd want to move forward with to present back for focused feedback. We also need to determine our focused feedback process and how that would provide enough opportunity and time for folks to really give us some insight and be reflective of where we're going as a district, and making sure that we include all stakeholders and in multiple ways in which they can provide us feedback. So not just a survey, right, but opportunities to have sit-down conversations with folks, opportunities to really dig in with our students, with our families, and then with our teachers as well. And then once we were able to get some of that focus feedback nicely aligned and in a report that makes sense, that you guys can really digest and look at, we hope to provide you that report so that you have some significant information to help you inform your decision making.
So, Kelly, I know that we have this as part of our workshop on the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
So is it expected that the comprehensive report and final options and feedback will be presented on the 17th?
I don't think we would be able to have all of the feedback completed by the 17th, but I think that we will have the options that we want to present for formalized feedback on the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly, I just have a couple of comments. One, obviously, I've had a lot of feedback in the last week about my comments at the last month's board meeting. And one of them, I guess, maybe you can clarify for me on the committee, but it's been said that the task was to create more opportunities for students. And I'm just wondering if the committee has had a chance to review the resolution that the board passed, I don't know, 12 or 15, 18 months ago, and really what it states, because that's not what it stated. The board resolution called for equitable educational programming. it called for maximizing performance, for providing high-quality educational opportunities for all, and for creating equity in access to electives and instructional minutes. And that's, to me, is very different than creating more opportunities for students, because I think if we're just trying to create more opportunities for students, let's go with the 10-period schedule that was proposed. So if you could just clarify that, or, you know, perhaps you haven't even seen that resolution because it's old.
No, I
But
didn't
that's
have-
what kicked off our process, I think.
Yeah, and I appreciate you clarifying this concept of access and opportunity. I think opportunity doesn't necessarily have to mean quantity. Opportunity also is important, indicative of quality and the intentionality of the opportunities that we provide our students. And I think that's also significant as we think about the partnerships and access. So when we think about our K-Tech and our dual enrollment, those are also some key points that we've been talking about around access and opportunity. And then it's also the types of courses that we offer as well. So it's not just like the amount, it's a real focus on what is that quality, what is that construct, and how are we ensuring that that's in alignment with our priorities and portrait of a graduate.
Kelly? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And then just the other thing I had a question about, Mr. Essler talked about using data to, concrete evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And at our last meeting, Trustee May asked for some data, which I assumed, shame on me, that it was going to be made available for us for this meeting, and it wasn't. So I think on Friday, I emailed a list of 23 different data points that I would like to see. Is that information going to be made available to us and to the committee?
Okay, so let me backtrack. So you did not receive in your board notes on Friday the information that we shared with our committee last week? You did, okay. So that more, because I do know that there's an extensive list that you asked for. The list that we were asked for previously, we gave you, okay. Yes, so we will share, we can share all of that data with our committee once we get it all together. Thank you, Mike Nelson.
And I apologize, I know it's a lot of information, and it may not all be available. And then just final, I guess, on feedback for me, and I don't know if you're asking for it, on how we get feedback from the public.
I am asking for it.
Okay, so I thought when we did boundary zone changes, we did open houses, and we kind of had a team that presented this one and a team that presented that one. To me, that would be maybe an idea that since things are opening up, perhaps we could do. Because it seems like with this last survey, there's a story behind each of these schedules, and you just don't get that reading it.
No.
And so if you had a group of people who were knowledgeable or passionate about a particular schedule, they could explain that, I think, better than we can on a piece of paper. And I don't know, maybe we can video those or something and have them available for those who can't come. But I thought that worked well when we did boundary changes, and I think it could work well in this process. Obviously, there's a lot of interest.
I agree with Trustee Morserow. I think it's a really good idea to have forums for folks to come talk to people, or we're putting it on our, we're launching it in some YouTube fashion that they can watch and see, and then have an avenue for feedback for them as well, whether it's a survey after they have either attended a workshop or watched those videos and giving input that way. I agree with Trustee Morserow. The survey was hard to weed through the 3 schedules and have a clear understanding of them.
I have a question for Dr. Cook, if that's all right. Sometimes I need to go back to the root occasionally in the midst of this process to understand kind of what's here. And we lift up the audit a lot, but I would like to hear from you, why in a district our size is it important, and we have a lot of feedback, is it important to align 2 schools in the district our size, versus we had feedback tonight that said, let's things are working. We have 2 schools, more opportunities that way, but could you maybe, we entered into this process, take us back a little bit as to why in our size this is important work for our district?
So some of this is aligned to size, and some of this is just foundational in values, and that is that the board's task is to ensure that students have outcomes that are desirable by the board. And the audit was one of the very first ways of approaching that. There's a different set of standards established in two different schools in our district, and that those standards are creating different expectations, quite disparate expectations, one with a much larger, more vibrant opportunity for courses, one with a much more committed focus on increasing and maximizing instructional minutes in the amount of courses. And each one of those comes with a trade-off. And the audit was quite explicit at pointing out that disparity. And so I think the first thing that we would propose from administration's point of view is that this is absolutely an equity issue. It's agnostic as to which one's better. It is not. It doesn't say that a 6-period day or an 8-period rolling block is better. It just says that there are different sets of conditions in these two schools, and that should be the board's task to own and operate that. Secondly, I think it's important to note that in a district where we have limited resource, it is our responsibility and job, your responsibility and job as trustees, to ensure that we are doing the best fiduciary responsibility we can to spend monies in a way that maximizes opportunity for each and every single kid. That doesn't mean equal. That means that every kid gets that opportunity. Thirdly, I would tell you that we took, separate from the audit findings, we did an extensive community-wide focus on what do we want for our kids, and came up with jointed and shared agreements on what Portrait of a Graduate would look like. And I would tell you that explicitly, we fought about this for months. Actually, you could even say years. By the time it was from the start till the end, Portrait of a Graduate was at the center of the decision-making. And the portrait includes all kinds of things, which one of the tenets of the Portrait of a Graduate is content knowledge. We said we value content knowledge. That is still agnostic to the schedule. It doesn't matter the schedule that we're talking about, but nonetheless, it is important. And so when the board first looked at, discussed, and considered a resolution, and I think Trustee Morsrow was right, I think it was about 15 months ago, we were explicit about determining what we wanted to hold as our values, and saying every kid gets to achieve this regardless of which school they go to and which part of town they live in, whether it's even, and quite frankly, whether venture is a part of that consideration. And I think that's the task that the board is challenged with, is to ensure and guarantee that every kid has those chances. And so to some extent, what we're talking about is operationalizing that mission and vision into strategic moves. And at the most basal level, one of those would be, what kind of structure do we believe best supports those decisions? Whether that is a block, whether that is a modified block, whether that is something we haven't even discussed. That inherently is the reason we're having these conversations. There's going to be some choice that's going to have to be elevated up based upon similar types of feedback that we've been chasing through boundary work and discussion. Now it's just as important with start times or collaboration time, which we find so valuable as well. Somewhere in the middle of all this conversation is a schedule that we can agree upon that will be beneficial to both of our high schools and meet the expectations and needs that were established as a finding in that equity in the audit, and also meets the expectations of the board's resolution.
Thank you. Ms. Nichols, will we, as we come together, will we be more efficient as a district when we both have, similar schedules? And will we ultimately save money in the long run? I just think of even printing costs and understanding costs of all the things that come from just the operational side.
Will we be more efficient? I think the travesty of being a two comprehensive high school town, we are a 3 high school town, is the continuous comparison. And I think when you think about the efficiency of knowing how your schools are operating, the teacher experience at the comprehensive high school, the learning experience at the comprehensive high school, when they are similar, It is more efficient in a variety of ways, not just cost, but it's efficient culturally. It's efficient in understanding what's working and not working in our curriculum, in our instruction. It helps us get granular with data that doesn't allow, well, if this model is so different, then we can't really compare that because it's not at a level in which we can make those decisions or comparisons. So I think as a school board, if you are looking for how do we really know how our students are doing, how do we ensure that our access and opportunity for our students is in a generalized form, that our teachers' professional development across the district is relevant because the tasks of time, the amount of time for professional development, the amount of opportunity and coursework and teaching force is similar enough, then there's much more efficacy in all of those lenses. The focus is how do we ensure that our students are engaged in a community of learning that is future focused, that is adaptive, that is meaningful, that is intentional, that has deep learning, high rigor, that you have communities of practice of teachers and leaders that can collaborate together all the time, learn from each other, do lab classrooms together, that we have professional development structures and coaching models that are not just school specific, but district specific. And so the more aligned we are as an entire system, the way that we do our work, that will be more efficient. And that's what we want for our students. We don't want, here it works like this, and that just makes no sense or is really hard to translate to this. In the same vein, I just want to name, equity is not equal, right? And equity is really about that nuance and ensuring that each and every child has the opportunity. And so there is and needs to be an opportunity for a nuance and culture and context at any school that we have in our system, so that they don't have to do the exact same thing, offer the exact same courses. And we're not advocating for that in any way. But we are advocating for ways in which the work that we do together, the way we experience work together, the way that we learn together is not too dissimilar.
Great. Thank you.
I just kind of been listening to these conversations, listening to the comments from all of our Lake City folks tonight, attending to committee members, and words keep like a word web swirling around. Standards, integral learning experiences, schedules, access and opportunities, curriculum audit, he said this, she said that, and I'm not sure we're making much progress. I've got to say, I received emails about lack of faith in the process. I'm not sure I'm feeling that we're moving forward, and what makes me sad about this is that if we really want to talk about the audit and we really want to talk about the resolution that Trustee Morrisroe just read, the audit was very clear in their findings, and their findings were surrounded about graduation requirements, the number of credits that students need to graduate from a given high school. They spoke frequently about they had never really seen a small district our size with 2 high schools that had different graduation requirements or credits. So it seems to me if we grounded ourselves in the belief that it is important that our high schools have similar graduation requirements, how these high schools want to operate their schedule, that's really not for me to say sitting up here, but I think there needs to be commitment from this board tonight if we're going to move forward with the will to have our high schools have similar or the same graduation requirements, because that in their issue creates the inequity. And so whether it's, access and opportunities or integral learning experiences, those should be standard and included at any high school. But the number of credits for our students to graduate is significantly different. And so I think if we commit to that, moving forward, it's going to be a lot easier to stomach what that looks like and how we get there. But, I looked up high schools around us or districts around us, and I could not find one that had high schools with different graduation requirements. I picked big, small. I went to Spokane Valley, District 81, Boise School District, and all of those high schools had the same graduation requirements. Now, every high school was slightly different on how they allowed that to happen. Rogers High School is focused on their AVID program. Lewis and Clark High School did this. Boise has their magnet schools, but they all were similar in their graduation requirements. And so I guess I'm asking this board tonight because there's a lot of confusion. People worried about we're taking away programs. Nobody wants to take away survival science. Or am I saying it right? Yeah. That's a cherished program in this district, in this community, and it's making me frustrated and sad that we're we're not focusing on what needs to be focused on. And what is in the best interest of our students is that if we have a student at CHS that realizes, I can't continue studying there, they can no longer transfer to Lake City if it's much beyond, middle of sophomore year, because they couldn't get enough credits to graduate. And so we're not running equitable experiences. Now, we might all view it differently. Someone from CHS might like that 6-period schedule, and Lake City clearly likes theirs, but let's refocus ourselves on what the initial task was and what the audit really said. And the audit called out the difference in graduation requirements. And so I guess I'm asking everyone here tonight, is there still commitment to ensuring that our high schools have the same graduation requirements? Because if there's not, then we're creating a lot of distress and duress for no reason.
Well, I guess my response would be is I will respectfully disagree that the audit was just about graduation requirements, because it very clearly called out opportunity multiple times. The difference between the two high schools and the opportunity available. And they set it out. They talked about all the opportunity that Lake City has in electives and the distinction between the two schools. And they walk through all of that. And so I think, and I don't know, you've used similar and same are not equal exactly the same requirement. So I'm not sure what you're asking, Trustee May, is if it's that we're going to agree on the exact same number of credits to graduate? Or are we talking about setting a baseline, and then those schools can determine whether it's a 7-period modified block, whether it's an AB block? Those schools can determine how they are going to get to that level of this many credits. But I just don't, I want to make sure that we're talking the same. And again, the audit did not just call out graduation requirements. It called out opportunity for our students.
It called out the discrepancy between having different number of credits to graduate, and in that, what was created was inequity in access to opportunities, if you want to say it that way. But I don't think we can, again, be very careful in setting a minimum amount of graduation requirements. That simply does not work, because then, a school is going to decide, well, we're going to offer 3 more classes. Well, is that enforceable? I don't even believe that would be enforceable for us to have a minimum number of requirements, but schools can then choose to add on 6, 7, 8 credits. I don't know how that works in the long run, because that's what we have now. I just think that it's important moving forward. Are we going to commit to this resolution that we passed over a year ago? This committee spent 5 months, and they still can't come to agreement on what an integral learning experience is. I don't see them getting any more. They're not going to get any closer on what how they view that. But if we provide some guidance as to what the goal of this process was, and I thought the goal was to shore up graduation requirements and finally be on the same page for our district. Maybe I misinterpreted that, and if that's the case, that's fine. But we should be very clear right now on what we want, because during the committee there's still, the questions: is the board willing to consider different graduation requirements? Is the board willing to consider different schedules? So let's have this conversation tonight, so then the committee can do their work, and they can come up with 2 schedules moving forward that the community, can look at and go through, and we can provide some data points. And we can really center it on what's best for students. And we haven't really talked about that in the committee work, because it's so much focused on what each school views as an integral learning experience. And I think we're getting lost, and we're spinning our wheels. And 5 months has gone by, and I'm not sure what progress has been made.
So we did spend the majority of our first months focusing on graduation requirements and what are the essential and required learning experiences that our students have. The finite number of those requirements would depend on the schedule, right? So that's why we don't have a set number yet, because we don't know how many blocks and opportunities of coursework that our students will have with the schedule going forward. But we did do that work first off before getting to the container of time. So we kind of set it up with what are the essential learnings and necessary courses and requirements. And then, okay, how would we like to organize that, right? How would we like to contain that process? And that's when we got into the schedule work. I think, I think it will be good to clarify, because in our last committee meeting, it was stated that the board wants us to have a similar schedule, that we're moving forward together with the same schedule. If you're saying, let's create, again, you would still have to have a number of classes and a schedule in mind. But we could say, you know, if we're just looking for these particular graduation requirements and each school can have its own schedule to get there, that's a very different setup, right? So, and then that puts the committee in a different space in terms of what their priorities are. So I think that type of clarity is necessary for our committee moving forward. So I would appreciate that.
I think I was trying to find the resolution here, and I had a heck of a time finding it last week. I wish I would have resent it to myself, but I didn't, and I can't find it in my email, just trying to find it. But I was actually surprised in there because it left that little bit of wiggle room on schedules. You know, I'm sure we anticipated that it was going to be a challenging discussion, knowing that it's something the district has undertaken multiple times over the last 15 years to try to find alignment, and then has abandoned it in the process. And so I think it says we will create common graduation requirements, and we'll strive to, or we'll try to have a common schedule, but it left some wiggle room on that concept. Personally, I still would like to see us reach that common schedule if possible, because I think there is some efficiency in that. I think there's, from a district standpoint, from planning and professional development and those sorts of things, sharing resources, whatever it may be, working with KTEC and NIC and those sorts of people, it would be much easier if the two schools were on a similar schedule. But I don't know that that's a deal breaker for me. I think the graduation requirement being the same at the two schools is absolutely something I plan to strive for, and that I would continue to advocate for. And I think I'm going to agree with Trustee May that I think the audit does call out the difference in graduation requirements. It's 12 additional electives to qualify to graduate from Lake City. And, you know, they didn't take a position. They didn't say one was better than the other. They just called out the fact that you have two schools with different graduation requirements. And because Lake City students had access to all those electives, they had a way broader course handbook, which makes sense. They have to take 12 more classes. And so they should. If they didn't, they would have problems with classes. And so, you know, I don't know. I think it is finding balance. To me, you know, my biggest concern with all this still is just balancing choice and elective with instructional time. And I don't know, you know, the state of Idaho has 29 core requirements and then 17 elective requirements. And that's the graduation requirements for Coeur d'Alene High School. At Lake City, it's 29 core and 29 elective. And, you know, I don't know where that came from or why, or if that's a magic number, but, you know, that's what I'm weighing in my mind, and that's the concerns that I hear when I listen to the community.
For myself, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about systems performance framework and return on investment. And so for me, it just makes sense as a district, as a performance, and to be able to measure things and to ask and get the data points that we need going forward for the next 20 years. If our schools have the same graduation requirements, and just from a systems mindset, how do things function? Being aligned. I think there's still room to hold things tight and loose, which we've been talking about, and creativity within classrooms at each space. I mean, there's at each of our high schools, there's lots of room for creativity, for teachers to dig in, to expand, and to really be creative within that. But I think some of the things we as a board need to hold on tighter to are how are we going to run each of our schools, and what needs to be similar to make us more efficient moving forward. So similar graduation requirements, and I'm still on board with schools. I know how hard it's been. I know how hard it's going to be hard, but we keep coming back to it, and eventually you have to make that jump to make those schedules the same.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you want us to have the same graduation requirements, do we still want to move forward with the consensus that we have an aligned schedule? Does that just, I mean, when we come back, are we looking, again, we want to look at 2 that would then be presented for your consideration, in which we would select 1 for both high schools? Do you want to see the 2 and then maybe go from there? I want to keep our time productive and in alignment with what you guys are looking for outcomes. So it would be helpful to know.
So are we in agreement that the consensus will be bring forward 2 schedules? We've kind of narrowed it down to 2 schedules. And the committee's able to do that work? Are they on board? We've talked a lot about 1 schedule. We haven't talked much about any other schedule. So is there commitment to being able to do that? I guess that is my question.
I think our committee could come up with 2 schedules. It will be getting those 2 schedules down to 1. And that will, be up to that feedback and the opportunity for you guys to make that decision based on that feedback. But I think our committee could come to a consensus on 2 options.
I think it's integral, if we're going to do that is done before we have our workshop. And so when we do the workshop, that we can use data, we can weave in, best practices in the classroom, and we can have an honest conversation. So I think for me, for our workshop to be beneficial and to stick to our timeline, it probably needs to be 2 schedules that the committee has selected by that time frame. Does that work? So that gives you guys 3 meetings, I think, or is it just 2 meetings before?
It'll be 2 meetings before the 17th.
Seems like an AB block has been picked as 1, so we know that's taken care of, so that now it's coming up with the alternative schedule, but I think there's still more work to be done on that, and I haven't seen really any work in earnest yet, so.
No. Not in terms of narrowing those 7-period block options, yeah.
Well, has an AB block been determined, or, we've thrown out modified, so I'm not sure that we're even.
Where we are is we had the 3 options that we presented. We were told not to move forward with the trimester. We want to look at a 7-period modified option. And then our other option was a rolling AB. And then it was a lot of conversation about the rolling AB and just ensuring the clarity around our cost model. And now we're trying to get into an opportunity to look at some other options so that we can narrow the top 2.
I think the best use of your time really would be to focus in the next 2 workshops that you have, or committee meetings, narrowing it to 2 schedules that you can get a consensus. It may not be 100% on those 2, but you can get a consensus on 2 schedules, having looked at, to the extent it's available, because I know it was a laundry list that Trustee Morrisroe sent, but having some of that provided maybe at the second committee meeting that you have, because it'll probably take some time to put that together. So start discussion on the two schedules, but solidify that after reviewing that information and then presenting that to the board at the workshop on the 19th. Because if it gets slowed any more than we are now, and this board isn't given an opportunity to start taking schedules to the community that come out of that committee, it's going to be my opinion that this board has to take over and decide those schedules in some fashion expeditiously and get those out, because we just aren't getting that out of the committee yet. And if we can't, then I don't know how or when we will.
Okay, thank you.
And if I misspoke on behalf of any trustee up here, please let me know if you feel we need to stretch this out, slow it down, change what we're doing.
No, I think I'm feeling disappointed that this has created such a division in our community. And I hear Dr. Cook say a lot, they're not Lake City's kids, they're not CHS's kids, they're not Venture's kids, they're our kids. This is our community, and we owe it to them to have commitment to graduation requirements that are a lot closer than they are. And so I wish we could come to some sort of middle ground. We've just been polarizing an issue that I think at heart we all want what's best for all of our kids, not Lake City's kids, not CHS's kids. No one wants to pit school against a school. So if we could avoid doing that and refocus ourselves to the long-term outcome of this decision, and that is hopefully in the best interest of both schools, I think we'll be better served.
Okay.
I think we will move on from this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Nichols. Next up, we have policies for action. These were all on our board agenda last month for information, and they're now here for action. If memory serves, I don't believe there were any comments provided on any of our policies. And so, Dr. Cook, do you have anything you were going to present on this?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the policies as presented.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those policies pass. Next, we have information action items, starting with curriculum. And I see Ms. Groutman up there, but maybe Dr. Cook's going to start, or do you want me to just let Katie take over?
Well, let's let Katie take over.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. I noticed that there are 2 bullet points. The second bullet point is expressive art, and I have a teacher here to help me present that. May I present expressive art before we go into math? Okay, thank you. So, Dawn Myers is a teacher from Lake City High School. She wrote the curriculum for expressive art that we are asking the board to put out for a 30-day review before hopefully adopting it at the June board meeting, and I will let Ms. Myers speak to that.
Good evening. Thank you for your commitment and dedication to our community. And I am just one teacher at Lake City High School in our art department. I teach sculpture, pottery, art 1, art 2, and I've taught photography when it's needed. I was inspired by events in my own personal life, having experienced a traumatic loss with no skill to overcome. I disengaged with myself, with others, and with basically life in general. And I found myself kind of standing at the edge of self-destruction. Eventually, in time, I found through visual art I could communicate again, and I want to share this source of strength with the individuals who can discover it for themselves. This course that I've written with the help of Katie Grotman, thank you, is designed to offer students the ability to explore media as a communication tool. The product is self-defined. The product that they would create is self-defined, but the goal is to develop lifelong habits through failure and success, and ultimately by documenting the process of experimentation and growth in knowledge. Mindfulness is a big piece of this because we need to be present in the moment to create. And although we cannot control our past and we cannot predict our future, we certainly can heal and build skills to persevere. So what you practice simply becomes stronger. So being present in that moment to practice and experience it builds skill. It's been proven that the brain has neuroplasticity and can be shaped by repeated experiences. If we slow down, focus clearly on our present activity, I do believe that students can build these skills. Please consider offering our high school students the opportunity to experiment with artistic media in an open format during their school day, whether at either high school, to have the opportunity to maybe explore a course like this. By approving the new course in expressive art, we could offer that opportunity to students.
And I would just like to add that we asked our mental health coordinator, Andy West, since this has a social emotional learning component to it, to read through the curriculum. And she thought that it was, well, I can let Andy speak for herself, but she was gave it a very positive review and thought that this would be very helpful for students. We'll stand for any questions that you might have.
Did you bring examples? I'm just wondering what you're carrying around.
That's
Well, I would
why
love to
I'm
see
moving
them.
out of your way. So you'll see as you read through the course, I've outlined different activities, and these are not coming obviously from that particular activity, but these are similar activities. So doing things like meditative media with two-dimensional, kind of exploring in more of a loose format and more of a constructive format. This was the same project, just with different mindset and different creative set. It was the ability to go multiple different directions. Things like painting, oh, thank you. I love having an assistant. Things like painting to music, so that you have paint medium available, but you can explore it in multiple different applications. And again, this is the same project, just different creative approaches to it. Exploring the mandala in more of a very formal format. We have some high school students who've done it this way. And then we have some students who've looked at the mandala and different geometric patterns in more of a painted format. Just gives you some ideas of the different creativity that our students have. And these are examples taken all the way from Art 1 to some of my more advanced students.
Okay, anybody have questions or comments? Thank you very, very much, and appreciate you bringing your art, and really appreciate you sitting here for 2 and almost a half hours. So
As I said, thank you for our commitment for your commitment to our community and dedication to this. I know it's tough work.
well, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawn. It's been a pleasure getting to work with her and learn from her. So tonight I would like to also talk to you about our secondary resource adoption. We're looking at math textbooks. As we talked about in our curriculum cycle, the first year of the curriculum cycle is really taking a look at writing curriculum, looking at standards, looking at how we can organize scope and sequence and year at a glance, those kinds of things. The second year is really looking at resources that align with the curriculum. The third year is marrying the two together, and the fourth year is full implementation and monitoring. So this year began, let's see, oh, here we go. Okay, so actually, nope, I skipped one, sorry. So the people involved in this selection have been primarily the secondary math committee. At the beginning of the year, I asked everybody who had been with the secondary math committee last year to join again. We had some people decide that, this year for various reasons they couldn't, which left us a little bit skewed more toward one high school than another in terms of compromising the committee. But I reached out multiple times and asked for more representation. And we couldn't quite get that, but the people who were involved were very actively involved this year, and so that was the main committee. We also included Abe Walleen, our regional math specialist, to be part of our work. He didn't actually vote on any of these resources, but he gave us his guidance. We were so delighted to be able to have Wendy Ward Hoffer, who is the author of Minds on Mathematics and Phenomenal Teaching. She zoomed in with both of our committees, and she spoke to, by both of our committees, I mean our middle school and our high school. I had broken them up due to COVID protocols when we met. And she spoke with both of them, and she offered this advice, which I thought was very interesting. She said, I travel a lot. And she said, when I come back from, or when I get to a destination on a trip, I go to the rental car agency. And she said, I could spend the majority of my trip going through rental car by rental car and looking at the bells and whistles and features of each individual car and trying to figure out which one is going to be my favorite and the best. She goes, but I don't want to spend most of my trip there. She goes, I want to spend most of my trip actually getting to my destination. And she goes, the curriculum resource is much like that. If you know your priorities and you know what it is that you want and you know your vision for what kind of instruction you want for your kids, you can spend less of your time. Like if music is super important to you, get the upgrade to the awesome stereo. But for the most part, focus on where you're going to take that car, where you're going to drive it. So that kind of gave us a little bit of framework for how we were thinking about it. We also accepted reviews from non-committee members. So we recognized that we didn't just want the voice of the people on our committee. We wanted to make sure that we shared information with non-committee members. And so we asked, since there was representation from both comprehensive high schools, we asked those members to share out with their colleagues to get their feedback in our first round of reviews so that their voices could be heard too. So those are the voices that have primarily been part of this work. So I won't go over every piece of this timeline, but in October is basically when we started reforming the committee. I wanted to give people September to readjust to life after COVID, or during COVID, and hopeful thinking, I guess. And so in January, we began in earnest, and we really started looking at resources in March, and today we're in front of you, May 3rd, with a recommendation to the board and a request for a 30-day review to the public. So as we were looking, as we were thinking about those features that we wanted our car to have, these were some of the features that were important to us. Profile of a graduate alignment. We said that's key. That's our North Star. This is where we've been building to all this time. Instructional framework alignment. So we looked at those key features of our instructional framework. Things like discourse. Things like opportunity to build community. Things like thinking strategies, opportunities to apply those really deep thinking opportunities. We looked at standards for mathematical practice. How well did these align? We looked at opportunities for assessment, support for all learners, and we also looked for relevance and authenticity. So those were some of our guiding criteria. The other thing that I would like to note is that we didn't start with every resource to begin with. I started this process by only looking at resources that were already highly recommended by Ed Reports. So Ed Reports is a resource that ranks curriculum resources. They use 3 criteria. They use focus and coherence, rigor and mathematical practices, and usability. And so we only looked at resources to begin with that had high ratings for all of those, so that we knew that whatever resource we picked would be something that we knew was nationally vetted. That was important to us. Someday I'm going to learn how to use this correctly. All right, so middle school texts. We looked at Illustrative Math by Kendall Hunt, Illustrative Math by McGraw-Hill, Ready Classroom by Curriculum Associates, and Envision by Savas Pearson. And what happened with the middle school kind of made my jaw drop. We had 2 representatives from every middle school who sat through the first round of reviews, who really looked at all of this. And in the first round of reviews, they unanimously chose Illustrative Math by McGraw-Hill. And Illustrative Math is one of the only curriculum resources I have seen that has a perfect score. So that's kind of exciting. Illustrative Math was originally created as an open education resource, but it's combined with McGraw-Hill so that it has the platform and the digital pieces that will make it easier for students to access, whether they are at home or in class with a Chromebook or in class with a textbook. It's a problem-based curriculum that presents a lot of juicy tasks. And another thing that Wendy Wardhofer said to us is that when you are teaching math, you want to have 80% of your time spent on conceptual understanding and 20% of your time spent on procedural understanding. So procedural understanding is the kind of understanding that you get from fluency, from knowing your addition facts, knowing how to complete algorithms efficiently, all those kinds of things. Conceptual understanding is really understanding that occurs when you can apply the math deeply and you know when and how to apply it. So she said 80% conceptual, 20% procedural. When you look at most math curriculum resources, it's often the opposite. You'll often see 80% procedural, 20% conceptual. So what's really exciting about illustrative math is that it meets that standard that Wendy Wardhofer was talking about. It's very conceptual. And what the middle school teachers said to us was, we believe in this resource. We think this is what our kids deserve. This is important, but we're also going to need a lot of support to get there. We're going to need some help, some professional development in order to help us achieve this and using this well.
Katie?
Yes.
Is it, so is it a book or it's
Yes.
an online version or it's both?
It's both.
Okay.
It's an online text, or excuse me, it's a physical text, and it has online components to it.
How is parental support in it? It seems like particularly at middle school, that's one of the biggest frustrations you hear from parents and Common Core and UGG, right? Because it's not the way I learned math.
Right.
And, having that resource that you can kind of look through it and say, okay, this is what they're trying to teach them here. And then you can support your student. And maybe in some texts we've missed that, right? And parents can't figure out how to support their students.
Yeah. I think I think Trustee Morrisroe, that this is that's a very important point. We haven't, to be frank, we haven't looked as deeply into the parental support components as maybe we could have. So if that's a piece that's missing, we'll need to work to supply it. I know that all of the curriculum that we have looked at does address that. That's part of the usability feature. But I think that some resources do that better than others. And the nature of some of those juicy tasks and that conceptual understanding is that there are fewer, like, you do it like, there are fewer opportunities sometimes where it spells out exactly how to, but so to put it bluntly, I'm not sure. You hear me tap dancing around. But I think it's an important component to consider and something that we would definitely need to look into.
Thank you.
The other piece about this is that they were the teachers who reviewed this. This came with a program called ALEX, which helps address some of those procedural pieces and also provides personalized learning. And as they were reviewing ALEX, the teachers were less than thrilled with ALEX. And what they really decided upon that they were hoping for was being able to extend IXL, which we currently use in Boost courses, to all students in the middle school. And what that would provide is personalized learning opportunities for every student and those procedural pieces that they wanted to make sure get addressed. So that is what they're hoping for. They're also hoping that you will approve that the accelerated 6th grade and the accelerated 7th grade resources as well. The reason there's no accelerated 8th grade is because at the 8th grade level you would go into integrated. So that was the middle school story. Are there any questions on that piece? Okay. There's a different story for integrated 1 through 3. Again, we started by looking at only highly regarded ed reports, reviewed resources. And the way that the first vote went, it was extremely split. As I looked at the votes by the committee, what I was able to do clearly was eliminate reveal and open up. Those two were definitely not highly regarded. What was less clear was core connections, integrated math by Carnegie, and Envision by Savas. So what we saw was that Envision by Savas had the number of first place votes. Then it was core connections, and then it was integrated math. But if you looked by weight, by how many people voted something in second place, it was tied between Envision and Carnegie. So that was the first round of voting. And really the first round of voting, the idea was to be able to narrow our choices so that we could really dig in and decide what we wanted. After that initial vote, I narrowed it down to those top three, integrated, Envision, and core. And I reached out to various districts that were using them and got information about each of these and how the implementation was going. And what we learned was that CPM was a very excellent workshop approach resource that teachers have to be 100% all in to do well. And Envision was a resource that often, if you look at that 80-20 split, it had more towards the procedural and less towards the conceptual. So there's a performance task that happened with each unit, but it was only one. And so there weren't as many opportunities for those juicy tasks. And where we kind of have it, what we kind of have in the middle is this Carnegie integrated. And so what happened was the second round of voting from the committee, which included, I prepared 2 reports for them, one from committee members, one from non-committee members. And what happened in the second round of voting between those top 3 resources was that after they had an opportunity to review all their peers' feedback and they had an opportunity to hear from the districts that I had reached out to, we had 4 people vote for Envision and 4 people vote for integrated math by Carnegie, and 1 person voted for CPM. So it was a tie, but when you looked at second place votes and you weighed it, what revealed itself was that Envision is in our committee, was either you loved it or you hated it. It either received mostly first place votes or mostly third place votes. What we saw with integrated was that it received the highest number of second place votes. And so if you're looking by weight, then integrated rose to the top. So it's by a very narrow margin that I'm bringing a recommendation for Carnegie Learning to you. And Carnegie has with it, they call it a hybrid solution. And so what it has with it is called Mathia. So just like IXL, it has this digital component. It's considered a hybrid learning model. It's a beefier text. It's a consumable text. And so what I've learned is that many school districts have developed different ways of handling that. That's going to be a drawback, I think, for our folks who are using it. But we have quite a number of people who are using it, including Spokane School District, Meade School District, Spokane Valley School District, and some others throughout the state as well. And so with that, they also cited the need for professional development. Teachers are really seeking that as they they wish to implement this resource. And so with that, I bring before you these two resources for 30-day recommendation. And then would ask that at the end of 30 days, you would consider adopting them. What questions may I answer?
Couple questions. It feels like we've talked about high school math forever, doesn't it?
It does.
I think 6 years on the board, we've talked about it every year. Implementation of these texts would be next school year?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a professional development plan yet?
Well, so I am working on developing that right now. My preference would be that we do some both in-house and out-of-house professional development, depending on which resources, if these were both chosen as our resources, these companies provide some professional development that would help us with how to use the features, the bells, the whistles, the buttons, those kinds of things. My hope would be, though, that we could blend that with ongoing job-embedded professional development to teachers so that they could get in-house professional development that would help them focus on the instructional framework and how to use these within our instructional framework and toward our portrait of a graduate goals.
Okay, and that work would begin prior to the school year, or?
Some of that would begin prior to the school year, and some of that would continue on throughout the school year. So what I would hope for is that we could have opportunities for job-embedded professional development, much like we did with the ELA, once a month, where teachers could come together for a half day, for example, to engage in learning and meeting making and sharing ideas around this curriculum.
Okay, thank you. And then just my last question, financial considerations on these, they're in the proposed budget coming out of curriculum resources for next year?
Yes. So, well, out of this year, if we can get it approved in time. So IXL, a 6-year contract would be roughly $100,000. The McGraw-Hill roughly would be $272,000. Carnegie would be roughly $415,000. And that's within our budget for this year.
And Katie, with the consumable for Carnegie, so how many years of books does that get you?
6 years.
6 years. Oh, fantastic. Thanks.
Yes, all of these would be for 6 years.
Was Core Connections somewhat similar to the integrated math? I was just looking at the votes, and it's just interesting. 1, 2, it had 3, but then it seemed like, and then the integrated had 1 in the first round of voting, or I can't remember. So were they very similar? Then that made those other 3 go and vote for the integrated math. I'm wondering what, maybe I missed it in some of the comments, but what maybe switched.
Why they switched?
Yeah.
So as they were reading each other's comments and the comments of their peers, and when we heard from other districts, so for example, West Ada just adopted this Core Connections, and I talked to a curriculum director in Salem, Oregon, who had adopted it. And what the Salem, Oregon curriculum director told me is that you really have to have 100% of teachers all in order to use it effectively. And so while it was attractive because it really immersed teachers and students in the workshop model, considering just where, considering sort of what our teachers were telling us that they were wanting, it might have been difficult to get to that 100% all in. Mm-hmm. And so this Carnegie represents a more measured approach toward getting to that.
Well, I'm hopeful they're all in, because that's what the goal is. So
yeah.
Thank you for the work on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You and your team. I know you guys spent a lot of time
Katie, I had a quick question or kind of a comment. As Trustee Morrisroe said, I think I remember 4 years ago, kind of the beginning conversations of adopting an integrated math, and it might have even been preceding my time, 5 years ago, you guys have been, discussing this. So I kind of feel like this is the icing on the cake, right? I remember saying we have to wait to get resources until curriculum is finished and we've tried it. And so I hope that your staff, for them, this is kind of like the icing on the cake and that they're happy with this choice, and that as they move forward, it's kind of solidifies that they've achieved their goal. And so would you please express our debt of gratitude for all of their hard work. This has been a long haul, it's been a marathon, and it kind of feels like we're getting close. And so I hope professional development is easy and implemented in a time that the staff feels prepared to hit the ground running with this resource, and it'll make their job hopefully easier, that now they're not creating and that they have something each and every year. So thank you so much. I think this is a huge achievement for our district, and I'm excited to be able to look at it. And so can we go to the district office if we wanted to kind of preview the copies?
Yes, the Carnegie is there currently at the district office. Illustrative math is still on its way. We have illustrative math is currently deployed in the schools. The teachers are not using it, but they're actively studying it. And rather than ask them to turn it over to me and steal their opportunity to learn, I allowed them to keep it in their hands for right now. But it is on its way to the district office, illustrative math is. But Carnegie is already there.
Only one quick comment, and it's just great to see you in front of us. I've had lots of people ask me, when are we going to get back to talking about education and curriculum? And so having you here feels normal.
Yay, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. I too just want to give you kudos, your timeline and setting that out, and just your drive throughout everything else that's going on. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate the board's support, and I also very much appreciate the teachers and the members of our committee. They've worked extremely hard to get to this point, so thank you so much.
All right, so moving on to our next item then, System Performance Framework. Dr. Cook?
Thank you, Chair Brumley. This is another one of those touch point moments in the strategic plan work, and I just want to lay this out before I turn it over to Mike. As you recall, we kind of defined the what of the strategic plan last summer, and we presented a plethora of frameworks to you all for your consideration and later approval that established here's how we intend to deliver upon the goals we've established for each and every child. Now the systems performance framework becomes the how will we know how we are doing kind of component of that. And so today Mike is going to present to you the first draft of an approach that we would like to undertake that is going to be first part, an established and hopefully approved upon document that will support how we will look back and benchmark ourselves and our performance with as a system for the entire district. And then secondly, it will also lay the groundwork for the next iteration of the next pieces of that, which is what must we train on and provide professional development on, and then how will we secondly start to make decisions that are oftentimes the most critical, which is how do we best maximize a dollar, which will be the next kind of, I think, plan that will come before the board, which is performance-based budgeting, so that we're maximizing how we are using those resources based upon the feedback we get in a systems performance measure. So all of those pieces are integrated, and when fully implemented, this is all cyclical, and there will be the ability to look back at the what's that were approved last year over time and say, are they still the values that we contain in the district, and are they still what we want for our kids 5, 6, 7 years into the future? And so I'm going to have Mike present the very first draft and very first shot at the systems performance framework tonight. And lots and lots of people have contributed to this document. Lots and lots of input has gone. And I want to thank Mike for helping coordinate all of that.
Thank you, Dr. Cook and Chair Brumley and members of the board. I stand in front of you as a very proud papa. This document has been nourished, it's been guided along the way, and now at a bouncing 2 pounds, 8 ounces, there it is. This has been a very enjoyable process. to be able to think about how we as a system make decisions. And certainly my title is Director of Assessment and System Performance, and I spend a lot of time crunching numbers around assessments. But ultimately, this is really trying to get us to answer the question, how do we know what we're doing is working? That's truly where we're going. And ultimately, when we stand in front of this community and we say, we believe that this is working, and here's how. This plan, this framework is intended to be able to provide you and the community that assurance that what we are doing has value. And if it isn't, that we should stop doing it. And we should rethink about why we're there. Specifically, we've talked a lot about the audit tonight. In the 2019 curriculum audit, we were called out for not really having a way to be able to evaluate the practices that we have. Specifically, they called out the fact that we are a district of a lot of options. We provide a lot of programs and services for our students, but we don't have a current plan to be able to evaluate them. So ultimately, system performance is something that we've been kind of bantering around, and I'm going to use 3 vocabulary words, and I'd like to take a few moments to kind of break them down for you. First of all, what is system performance? Well, it's a structured way of thinking about our decisions, having consistent ways of measuring them. How do we score them? How do we review them? That's ultimately what it comes into. And with that goal of having the portrait of the graduate right in the very front. If we are doing things and we are not focused on the portrait of a graduate, it's not going to work. That's what this is intended to do, is keep us laser focused on that view. Number 2, we're going to be able to measure through a system of program evaluation. Now, the front of this document goes through a lot of the nuts and bolts. The actual steps of program evaluation are mostly in the appendix. But you can see systemically, step by step, the practices that we want to put in place to look at what's happening. What kind of data do we need to have? Who's going to be involved in the decisions? And ultimately quantifying the programs that we have. Finally is going to be a value called academic return on investment. Again, this community is extraordinarily giving to us. If we don't have bang for our buck, it shouldn't be continued. And this is ultimately going to lead to a practice called performance-based budgeting, or PBB, that will be in the finance framework that will be coming soon. So I'd like to kind of break that down into a metaphor for you, and I'd like to thank John Mon in our communications team. He is the artistic genius behind this brain trust of our instructional core, who was bantering back and forth and saying, really, what does this mean? So ultimately, our portrait of a graduate is our fruit. That is what we want to bear. But not all fruit looks the same. Some of it's going to be ripe, some of it's going to need a little bit of extra time. But ultimately, those are our 6 C's hanging from that tree. System performance is me. I tried to get him to put a little bow tie on him, but he just wouldn't do it. But as a farmer, as an orchardist, it's my job to make sure that things are growing well. Do we need to add a little extra here? Do we need to check on the water supply? How are things going? Ultimately, performance-based budgeting is us taking our fruit to market. Are our kids going to college and university at a greater point? Are they more inclined to college and career readiness? What resources do we need to put behind our orchard so that it bears the best fruit? Ultimately, the core of that tree is all of our strategic plan, from equity, social emotional learning, assessment, curriculum, long-range facilities plan. Everything comes together. System performance is a way for viewing all of these pieces. Now, again, the title that I wear is Director of Assessment and System Performance. And certainly when we look at what we want to measure, there's a lot of familiar names up on the screen. ISAT, IRI, college and career readiness exams, civics, engagement surveys. We've talked extensively about these. But ultimately, that's just one piece. It's a forward-facing piece of our district's work, but it's not everything. Instead, system performance brings out a wider net, and it starts taking a look at our social emotional learning practices, our transportation department, our finance, our maintenance and operations, nutrition, school plus, and all of these services that we provide, because they have impact for every student. And again, if we are not using those as a vehicle to be able to meet our portrait of a graduate, our system is not performing well. So again, we're trying to bring a lot of these components in together. What kinds of outcomes can we expect? Well, I just brainstormed a few of them that are in the framework itself. And I hope that you saw we tried to give some very specific, personalized examples of the questions that we might want to ask. How are our students progressing through to meeting their portrait goals? Do our outcomes represent the benefits that we're trying to get them to get? Are we putting enough emphasis in one program or another? Are our goals clear? Are they understandable? Are they shared? Do we need additional partnerships? That's what this document is trying to do. So ultimately, we're trying to merge a lot of data points together. We are talking about high school schedules right now. Well, we should be looking at our facilities at our high schools and what they can take. We should be looking at the number of staff that we have, their levels of experience. We should be able to look at how many aides we have to be able to support those learnings along the way. Everything coming together, again, with the focus of our portrait. The way that we will quantify our work is through a program of performance or a program evaluation, whereby it's an iterative process and it goes into the ideas of what do we need to prioritize. If you reflect upon the curriculum audit, we actually did an audit of programs, and it's fairly extensive. It's on page 5 of the draft framework in front of you. All of these things that we have, some of them self-induced, some of them mandated by state or other entities. But ultimately looking at those and seeing, are we really prioritizing what we need to prioritize? Bless you. And then every once in a while reviewing those, because times change. We weren't in a pandemic 3 years ago. Our priorities are different today than they were that time. This would be public facing, give us an opportunity to be able to develop multiple KPIs, key performance indicators. We currently have an instructional management system, IMS. It's called Homeroom, but it's mostly what we use internally. And we can create a variety of different dashboards from metrics all over the place about our system. We want to start bringing those forward facing. We want to give you access as trustees, an opportunity to see metrics that you know are important and that perfectly align with our portrait and our strategic plans. We want to also provide dashboards for our community so they can see longitudinal enrollment, that they can see the numbers of different metrics along the way as we develop the portrait. And ultimately, we will have public dashboards that look at our academic return on investment. This little bullseye comes out in 4 different quadrants, and it basically says, what we're doing has impact. Where's it going to fit? Is it something that we need to scale up? Is it something that we need to sunset? Is it something that we need to absolutely make a priority for us because it's not working along the way? So values and metrics come together to give us feedback. Ultimately, that then triggers discussions at our finance department and with our buildings and saying, well, if our data is saying that this investment is not paying off to meeting the goals of the portrait of the graduate, something needs to happen. And either we need to put more emphasis into it because it's that important to us, or we need to sunset it. We need to try something different. Ultimately, everything is going to be developed by our building teams. Although I, again, wear that title, I will not be doing all of the program evaluations for the district. This is something that has to happen at our boots level. And we need our leaders to be able to incubate these practices. And we've given templates, frameworks, spreadsheets to be able to have them take a look at it that we have now started within our school learning plans. So although this has been reviewed by multiple staff, we have a small leadership team that has been looking at this document over time, and I greatly value the collaboration with our incredible cabinet team and our school leadership teams. We still have a little bit of work to do with this. Tonight, I present to the initial framework, but our general school community has not seen this yet. We would like to be able to present it out to our school community for 30 days, be able to provide it back for you to the June meeting on June 7th. If this is something that you believe in and you want to put your support on, the first effort that we would do is updating our initiative inventory that was first collected at the curriculum audit in 2019. Start identifying what our priorities are around our new portrait of the graduate. You may remember that was not created at that particular time. What are the things that are really important to us? What do we want to identify and see whether it's banging for our buck? And then at that point, we would be able to hopefully have new KPIs and dashboards available for you in early fall. Additionally, our instructional management system homeroom that we talked about, that contract does expire at the end of this year, so it's actually a great opportunity for us to make sure that we have the tools and resources to make this come to work. We expect a request for proposal to be launched within the next couple of weeks and have a recommendation for you for long-term purchase, hopefully in June as well. Ultimately, I am very pleased with the work that we have done. I'd love to be able to answer any questions that you have.
Well, Mike, I want to say that it was really nice seeing you present a PowerPoint that didn't have a bunch of graphs and numbers. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Chair Brumley. Very tough.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I don't think there are any questions. And so that would be my only comment is thank you to you. Thank you to your committee that has worked tirelessly, just as I know all those other frameworks had, and very excited to put it out for comment and see what the feedback is and put it into circulation next month. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your input.
All right, we have our second to last agenda item, Learning Recovery Early Draft Presentation. So I'll let Dr. Cook open that.
Thank you, Chair Brumley. This is actually, we're going to want at least some guidance on this one. I think this is going to be a tag team between our two assistant superintendents. At least some early guidance on some of this. While much of this is, we're going to start talking about our version of how we allocate and start to, almost as a perfect follow-up to what Mike just presented, how we start to make the most impact for the federal dollars, some of the subsidized money that we are going to receive, and how we are going to present it into the system over the next 3 years. And more specifically, I think what we want to focus on right now is how do we immediately address some needs that are going to come up this summer. We will start getting allocations of those federal dollars this summer. July 1st, we anticipate when those would be released. However, we would have needs that we want to be able to address with students this summer. So you're going to see kind of the broad level, I think, elevator type discussion at the top. And then once we learn more about how that allocation will be released, we would have follow-ups. And at this point, I think our first business of order is talking about the kind of broad picture and then how we would like to start this summer. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate and Kelly. I don't know who's going first. Kate is. Kelly is.
Good evening. I missed you guys, so wanted to come back. So just to clarify around the particular funds that we're trying to address right now are the $2.7 million specifically for learning. They call it learning recovery or learning loss. We like to approach it from a non-deficit mindset and really thinking about acceleration and opportunities for targeted intervention. So we are hoping to outline for you some specifics around how we want to spend resources and money on summer learning, enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs. And there is the possibility of an extended school year within this grant, although that's not something we've seriously considered. And we want to talk about some ways that we want to respond specifically in the honor of this funding stream around students' academic, social, and emotional needs, and to address the disproportionate impact of the coronavirus on student subgroups. And so that's just everything we're going to talk with you about today, it really does target and address these very specific things outlined in the funding plan. That's the word I'm looking for. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about some learning supports. And so what we're looking forward to is an opportunity for summer academic learning acceleration, summer enrichment learning, and then some long-term learning improvement strategies and some after-school programs. So we have our traditional summer school for credit recovery, students who need to make up their credits at the middle and high school level. That program, as it always has been, is continuing forward. We're also looking forward to having some very specific summer learning programs for our students in partnership with some of our community partners, U of I, other community organizations. NIC, I think, still, yep, right? Maybe, no? We're okay, not sure. But we want to maximize some of our partnerships. In addition to hosting some of our own opportunities, K-12. And we're trying to put a lot of that together. I think Kate will speak specifically around some of those other programs at the elementary level. But at the high school and middle school level, our middle school credit recovery, we're hoping to do some more targeted interventions and project-based, application-based learning in addition to just the credit recovery programs. And then we're also hoping to have, at the high school level, some courses offered, an AP intensive institute to support our AP students, and then also an opportunity for just some courses of interest and ways for students to focus on their learning. And so that will be dependent upon who's willing to teach and who wants to sign up for what. So we're working that out at the high school level. And then we also are, I'm going to go back. I really want to emphasize this target on longer term learning improvement and after school programs. The research is suggesting right now the significance around tutoring and small group initiatives and interventions. So we really want to look forward to some opportunities throughout the school year to have opportunities for students to have one-on-one support and intensive small group learning opportunities and after-school enrichment opportunities as well. Not just on like academic core, but what are some cool projects, partnerships, clubs, opportunities that they get to explore and apply content and their interests and extracurriculars in ways that are really focused on that expansion of learning, that acceleration of content knowledge, and most importantly, our Portrait of a Graduate component, so collaboration and creativity, communication, all of those core elements. Okay, and then, this is my last one? Okay. And so on the elementary end, we have the redesigned and expanded CDA reads. So we have our specific program at Bora, and then we're going to have these magical learning buses, and they sound amazing, and they're going to go to all kinds of places, and kids are going to get great books and T-shirts and all kinds of fun stuff, and they're going to read, and they're going to love it, and they're going to go off into their imaginations. And so we're excited about that opportunity to have some real community partnership and be out with our students and with their families. And ensuring that they're still having access to that content and creativity. We're continuing our extended school year, so that's something that we've always offered, and we're going to continue that. And then, of course, that middle school and high school credit recovery, and then the AP Academy and the summer learning acceleration. So those are some very specific programs that we're looking forward to supporting this summer.
You know, you're at the end of the evening when your partner's back there say you get 2 minutes. So, next slide. Kelly mentioned that as part of the enrichment learning that we'd like to reach out to partners. We've been working really hard to do that. And the reason primarily for that is that some of our preliminary information from our teachers about, signing up and would you be interested in teaching summer programs, we're not getting a ton of response, and we sort of expected that because school districts all over the country are noticing that there's this sort of pandemic fatigue that's hitting home. So we've been, our strategy, the core team strategy, was to reach out and to see, can we partner with people who are already doing this work in the summer? And of course, U of I is one of those people. We've had conversations with them, and they've told us a little bit about their Digging It program, and I think we included it in that board memo. But it's, it's some coding camp, it's cosmetic chemistry, partnering with, they are partnering with Growing the STEM, and to do some math camps and some internships for high school kids. And in addition, I think the idea would be that we would that we'd reach out to them, we'd partner with them, and we'd bring programs that are outside of our school district and expand those into our own schools. We think that's a little tricky because they're experiencing some of the same stuff we are, that they're trying to get staff, and they're trying, it's that issue of people are tired. However, Kristen Pomerantz at U of I has talked about, we think we have like 30 pre-service teachers that would be interested in doing some of this work with us, and we have a few more. So when we post this, it would be nice to have some certified teachers overseeing a lot of the work and the expansion with mentors. Like Kelly mentioned, the buses. We had imagined that these Imagine buses would come with books, but also come with mentors from junior high and high school and pre-service teachers to help our kids with their reading specifically. So that's kind of our goal. Camp Invention, of course, I think that's from the National Inventors Hall of Fame. So a very sturdy program that's been for a while, and they'll be at Nexa and Sorensen. Summer Plus, we wanted to partner with our own Summer Plus program to consider some scholarships for some of our kids and to expand that a little bit, bring in to the Summer Plus program some academic support as well as social emotional learning help for our kiddos. Kate Keinert was working on seeing if we could partner with the Kroc Center, so those 3rd and 4th graders who didn't get that swim experience last year and this year would get a chance to have swimming lessons there. So these are all kind of ongoing efforts. It's not completely defined yet. It involves a lot of conversation with our partners across the community, and it will, of course, require some coordination, and I think that's the last slide. Why, yes, it is the last slide. So the two programs that are or the two positions that are mentioned that we need your support for are positions, and I think they were in that board memo, a coordinator position, which we would expect would be full-time and would oversee not just the summer learning, but also extend into the next year at I think a teacher's salary. And the idea would be that person would oversee and direct and guide the funding, essentially all the work that we're trying to do together right now as a core team, and we're doing our best, but we need someone there to oversee it and make staffing decisions and help us coordinate locations and that sort of thing. And we don't expect that a coordinator can do all of that work alone, that we need this specialist, which would not be a certified position necessarily. It would be someone who kind of does the nuts and bolts work of organizing, finding places, coordinating resources, and that doing ordering and that sort of thing. So those are kind of the two positions that we're hoping for to get this off the ground. We know that we're running right up to the edge in terms of ordering supplies, opening up for staffing, getting all that work. We know we're just right at the edge in a timeline that says we need to act. So that's why what we're maintaining is that we expect next summer's program would be much more expanded and much more something that would reach out much to a number of kids, many more than this year. So that's kind of the staffing issue that we're asking for board support for right now. And then I think finally, just that timeline. So this year we were specific about it's an initial accelerated and enrichment learning program, and then we begin this long-term implementation of improvement strategies. We know from the pandemic that we teachers and educators got to have a window into what was happening at home for families, and families got to have a window into what's happening for their kids, the teaching and learning happening for their kids. And we know some people were so reassured and so, so complimentary both ways. And there were a lot of folks who were also disappointed. And that's just a welcome, and it's a call for us to get better and better in every single classroom at maintaining teaching and learning experiences, because we know before and after school is really important. What happens at 4:30 is important for a child, but that 6.5 hours every school day, it's important that we get better and better at providing that kind of learning experience that will create graduates, right, that we want to see, that Mike talked about. So that the expansion of the programs is evident in that timeline for you, and you can see it's nothing brand new each year. It's just an expansion and a deepening of the effort, the resources, and that sort of thing. I think with that, questions for us?
My question might be for Katie, and she might be able just to kind of nod back there, but the ESSER funds, it's been confusing as far as timeline when we receive funds. Is it possible, as it becomes more clear, that there would be numbers attached to some of these figures and there would be a budget and a timeline? Because I know there's a longer time frame to use them, just so we're kind of keeping our buckets all lined up.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We've begun kind of framing out what these funds look like over the next couple years. And there's more work to be done, but we want to have, of course, before we start making some of these larger decisions, larger dollar amounts, we want to make sure what's involved, what you may be saying no to down the line if you say yes now. And so that work is continuing. We will require board approval for every allocation of these funds. The learning loss funding is a little different because it's the set aside.
Okay.
So 20% of ESSER 3. And they just changed our allocation. I believe 1.6 million is what that comes to. I hope I'm not off on that, but it's a significant amount of money. So this is a priority to kind of get moving on that. And so it's sort of one of those decisions where it feels there isn't a huge risk of, we're going to have to say no to things that we need to do going on later, because we really do need to get moving on this learning acceleration, learning loss type of activities. So
that's great. Thank you. Kate, quick question for you. Everything sounded so amazing. I'm so glad to hear Summer Plus is going to have hopefully maybe some sort of learning sprinkled in. The buses sound magical also. And so is there a way that if there's anybody still watching, if we have community members, students that want to volunteer, where should we direct that interest towards, or is that still being developed as we move forward?
Right. So our expectation would be that coordinator would immediately start with staffing, start with pre-service teachers, getting out information to high schools and middle schools about a mentoring program. However, we've been doing that through CDA reads. We have that, that's an infrastructure that already exists for CDA reads, and we know we're tapping into them right now in their resources, ordering books already, making sure we get a first wave through CDA reads. So it's not like we have to wait clear up until the last moment to reach out. We can start doing that. It will just feel to us, we'll feel that reassurance of a great deal of coordination and guidance once we have a person in place that we know is keeping all of that together.
And last question, this might be Kelly, but she can just nod back there. On the AP Academy, that's an exciting plan. I don't know if Katie Kelly, who's in charge, but it said juniors, but I know a lot of our freshmen, or not a lot, but some freshmen, and particularly sophomores, do take some AP classes, and they seem like the ones that might be most benefit from this. So do we need to have an age limit or age requirement? Do you have to be entering your junior year to participate?
Trustee May, in talking with the AP teachers who were initially interested, those were the teachers at both buildings who teach AP Calculus. And so that was where we were starting with. But if we have teachers who also teach some of those courses, those AP courses that attract our freshmen and sophomores, we could certainly open it up.
Yeah, it just might be nice. I know it's a big jump for some of our freshmen or sophomores, and especially with what's happened. I know history, I think at CHS is one that some sophomores do take. So anyway, just a food for thought. But thank you guys for all of this work. I cannot imagine how quickly you've been moving to get it all organized. So thank you.
I think AP Calc is typically a senior course, right? In our,
The current juniors, sorry.
okay.
Juniors moving into senior year.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much, Dr. Roscoe and Ms. Nichols, and I think Katie even jumped in there on that one. So thanks. Yes, and thank you everybody for sticking around so late this evening. So the last item on our agenda is policies for information. I'm just going to open it up generally in the vein of expedience here. Does anybody have comments on a particular policy tonight they wanted to bring forward? Oh, Dr. Cook does. Okay.
I do want to at least acknowledge the misconduct policy that I think has been a collective effort over quite some time, and I just want to recognize. I think Megan is online for questions if anybody has those. She was wanted to be. She was a contributor and spent a lot of time helping us construct this policy, when in most cases we were looking for and utilizing Idaho statute when it came to issues to be addressed. And so this was what I would call a gap in our policy mechanism, first off. And then secondly, just a quick shout out, these will complete the 9,000s. So this will be the last of the 3-digit policies if these make it through the 30-day review. And we won't mention which staff member had that last, who had to carry that short stick to get those last ones through. But Megan is available if anybody does have questions on the misconduct policy.
Well, Megan, it looks like you stuck around for nothing. I am very sorry. Thank you for being here, though, and being available. And I know everybody thinks I'm going to close the meeting, but before I do, Helena and Austin, you guys sit so quietly all night long, and you really don't have an opportunity like the 5 of us do to weigh in or comment. And I know it's putting you on the spot, but did you guys have any insights or comments you wanted to share? And don't feel compelled. I'm just asking the question. What was that? Oh, sure.
Chair Brumley, can I mention that we did talk about that at our meeting this last week, and so they did ask about that, saying it's a long meeting if we're not participating. And what we kind of agreed to is, as we move forward in this role, we get them up here, one of them up here in a seat, that we have maybe asterisks on the agenda for items that would be relevant for them to participate in, and then they could prepare on those items. So moving forward, if it was high school schedules or policy that's really pertinent to students, that way we could kind of guide them when it would be appropriate for them to weigh in. So if the board wants to think on that, what those might include. It's kind of what we were imagining.
Okay. Well, thank you, Trustee May. I think that's helpful. Okay, have you conferred?
Yes, we have. Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a lot of finance and Mike Nelson talk, which we tolerated. And unfortunately, a lot of that is just a lot of information that we're still processing. And so we can't really comment on that. But I think I speak for both of us as well as everyone at SAG when we say thank you for all of your hard work that you do. I understand how long these meetings can go sometimes. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm sure in the up and coming meetings, we'll decipher the Mike Nelson talk and have some educated opinions.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, the two of you tonight. Thanks for the comic relief at the end of our evening, at our 4-hour plus afternoon. So with that, meeting is adjourned.